everyone. Hope you've all had a fantastic week. Apologies for the super duper delay. This episode is 2 days late. I had some things come up, unavoidable. Had to get some things done. Unfortunately, mess with the timing of the episodes, but not to worry. We are back with our regularly scheduled programming. Is the Super Bowl still on? Do we know who won yet? Seems to be the talk of the day today on Twitter. No, it looks like it's still going. Not that I watch it. But no, was just curious. Just wanted to check. In any case, yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Probably not the best time to stream because like literally millions of people are watching literally anything else. Fuck, I used literally twice. That's cringe. Not the best time, but hey, we don't do it for the views. We do it for the mission. And tonight, we have a very special topic to talk about. This is something that I've been meaning to get into for a while now, but for one reason or another, just haven't had not the opportunity, but I guess just the mind state. Because for something like this, this kind of an episode, it takes a little bit of something extra. And as of late, I think the timing and just the way the stars been aligning and all the stories that are coming out, I think it's the perfect time to cover it. The title was The Next 100 Years, but essentially, as the clickbait title for the stream is, Whitepill destroys the left. We're going to be talking about leftism and leftists and why that ideology should be eradicated completely from society, just uprooted, burned, and made so unpopular that it is akin to being a Nazi. Because that is what these people are. It's just their version of it on the left. And I know an idea can't be killed, so obviously we're not starting off with that premise. I've seen V for Vendetta. Okay, we've all seen it at this point. We know that ideas are bulletproof. So, anyways, there's lots to get into with that story. But before we get into that, if you want to support the stream, as per always, like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate anyone and everyone that watches. I do not read any chats or donations until the end of the stream. And if you'd like to have your message read on stream, there's a PayPal link for the bio.link/whitepill website. Also, a crypto link if you want to donate some crypto my way. And as I always say for the last couple of episodes, merch is on the way. It is on the way. Rest assured, it is in the pipeline. It is on my to-do list. It's only a matter of time until it's up. I already got a storefront. Now we just got to populate it. Got some ideas cooking, so stay tuned for that. And without further ado, I guess we'll just start with a preamble. I saw Avatar 3 over the weekend, the new movie, and my God, I mean, this is just we're reaching levels of slop never before seen to mankind, never before experienced. Because truly, I mean, of all the movies that I've seen in the last couple of years, this has got to be one of the biggest letdowns. I mean, they had a really good thing going with the first one, and now, but by the third one, it's all just the story's just kind of falling apart. We don't really know what's, going on. It's like they needed to spend at least 5 or 10 minutes before the movie actually began, explaining what had happened and what we had missed. Because Jesus Christ, going in blind, the amount of details that just fly out the window, you realize, oh my God, like I totally forgot about this happening in Avatar 2 and Avatar 1 and so on and so forth. They had a really, really good premise with some of the things that happened in the movie, which, okay, spoiler alert, there was a scene where one of the humans that has joined the Na'vi goes by the name of Spider, this dreadlock wearing kid. He somehow, I won't go to detail in explaining it, but basically he gains the ability to breathe the air on Pandora, right? The planet where they're all from. And I mean, at that point, right? Because the whole mission for humans is to colonize it. It's a resource-rich planet. They desperately need it. Everything from what was it? Is it unobtainium? Was that the material that they were trying to mine in the first one? Is it unobtainium? No. What is it? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, in 2009. Where's the avatar? Yeah, it's a rare earth mineral found exclusively on the exomoon of Pandora. Highly prized because of its applications as a powerful superconductor material. Right, so there's that, and then they start hunting the whales in the second one because they realize that this thing that the whales grow in their glands gives humans, essentially, it's the fountain of youth. It makes them forever young. They can never die. Right, their whole reason for traveling all these light years to the planet is to colonize it. That's the whole mission. That is the whole premise and the whole motivation for the humans to be there. And so they finally get somebody who is able to adapt to the environment. They no longer need the mask. They no longer need like special, any special gadgets or any special rooms, like no, oxygen, like nothing like that. No filters. No. This guy can just breathe the air regularly. He is literally like the most important person on the planet for the mission of humanity as a whole. And he's treated as like a side plot. Like he's not even the main issue. He's not even the main point of focus for the story. He's just used as a token, which is so. I mean, I understand that like there's levels to movies. Whenever you're watching a horror movie, you think, oh, why don't you just run there? Why don't you just jump there? Why don't you just not go into the dark, scary hallway? I get it. There's a level of suspension of belief that we have to have in movies. They can't all be 100% realistic. But my God, like their entire mission is predicated upon being able to adapt to the environment of the planet. Having something like that in their repertoire means they can colonize. If they can reverse engineer what happened to him, they can colonize the entire planet. And he's treated as a token, as a side story. It was just very weird. Like there's times in the movies where Jake Sully, right, the race trader avatar, right, this guy, the guy that went for that Navi pussy, that gave it all up for some blue. There's a point because Spider, the kid that can breathe the atmosphere on Pandora, he realizes like, oh no, we have to kill him. We have to kill him. We have to dump his body. We have to make sure they never find it, because if they do, then that's it. It's game over. They can colonize the planet. They can reverse engineer whatever happened to him, and then they just create a pill, an injection, what have you, and then humans can breathe, and they no longer need the use of avatar bodies. They no longer need any filters or any kind of technology to keep them protected from the atmosphere. And there's a point where he has to make a choice. It's like, okay, do I kill him, even though he's part of my family, technically? And it actually would have made more sense and for a much better movie if he did, right? Because like then you're making the character. There's some stakes involved, right? There's some serious decisions to be made. This is the kind of stuff that actually builds a character. It's kind of, it plays on some religious themes. Of giving up the most sacred thing you can, right? There's a level of sacrifice there. It's almost biblical. And they didn't do it. They didn't kill him. He spared him because he had feelings towards this kid, which, okay, fine. Like, he's part of their family, part of their clan, tribe, whatever. I understand. But come on, man. Like, geez, like it would have made for such a better story if they actually did kill him, and then they have to, deal with that grief, deal with that pain. It would have made for better character development. And there's so many loose ends that they left out of like, oh, we kind of saw them die, but we really didn't. And yeah, my God, what a fucking awful movie. I'm genuinely impressed at how these movies, like this is This movie took $350 million to make. That was their budget. And this is the script that they had. Like, this is their idea. Avatar could have been like an absolutely legendary series that will be known throughout film history forever, right? For time immemorial. It could have been. If it was just a little bit more serious, if it was just a little bit more dedicated to pushing the boundaries, right? To actually like having some kind of messaging. But they decided to just go with the soft PG take because they're trying to appeal to as many people as possible, I guess. I don't know. It's strange because when you have that level of investment, all those years, you know, the majority of those actors on the first movie, when they signed the contract, they signed a contract for like, 5-6 movies. That like years down the line, they will still be making these movies. That's a big commitment. That's a bigger commitment than Marvel. The initial phase of Marvel, what, lasted like 10 years? Not even? Something like that? Avatar came out in what, 2009? When did the first movie come out? Yeah, 2009. We're 17 years in, and they're gonna make 3 more movies if they do well. And each of them just keeps getting less and less and less good reviews as they come out. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's so stupid. It's just it's ridiculous. I don't know. I was thoroughly disappointed. For whatever reason, it's like the third highest grossing film in 2025, which I think it's less so because of the amount of people saw it. I think it's just because to pay for like the good ticket to see it in IMAX quality or 3D quality, you got to pay more. So naturally, like that, people are gonna buy those tickets. They don't want to just see the regular movie. They want to see it in how it was shot. Which, like, fine, like, all the visuals and everything, yeah, it's stunning, but, if you've played video games in the modern day, it's, like, okay, like, good graphics, but it's not enough to carry the movie on such a shit franchise, so I have no idea what they're gonna do with the next ones. And then that whole plot with the fire people, they used them as a plot device, but they didn't actually, like, we didn't get to explore the world or see how they lived. It was very few scenes like that, and I was actually kind of excited to see, okay, what happens when, there's a tribe of these blue monkeys that all of a sudden they abandon their god and they choose something else, right? Um, yeah, it was just very, very, very disappointing. I had a good time. It was just, I had a good time because, the friend that I saw it with, we were just laughing at it the whole time. It was just so absurdly stupid how bad the movie was. And it was just fun, I guess, hate watching it, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. And yeah, the another news, we had the Olympics open up, which is great. I can't wait for hockey. Can't wait for hockey. Canada's gonna wipe the floor with everyone. We got a stacked team this year. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Unfortunately, the games don't start until what? I think it's February the 12th is the first men's game, which is this coming Thursday. So I'm looking forward to see what our boys can do. Apparently there's no hitting in Olympic hockey, which is so retarded. Like, half the reason that people watch hockey, if not more, it's because of the physicality. It's because you not only have to be able to, pass the puck and shoot and do all these great plays, but you got to also be able to take a hit and to last and to survive and have fights and, all these different things. Like, it's a major aspect of the sport, and they just completely neutered it. They're playing by European rules, which, God, like, could you be any more soft? Like, really? Like, we want to see the best teams, go head to head. And I guess no hitting. Russia's banned for, like, yet another year, which, what the fuck? Like, so Israel gets to have a team. They get to come and show their flag, but Russia doesn't. Like, oh, okay, all right. I guess fuck Russia then. And it's not just because I have some kind of like patriotic sentiment towards that, which, yeah, like I kind of do. I want to see the Russians show out. I'm always Team Canada, but I want to see how the Russians put the screws to them. But it's more so just, once again, that double standard. Like, why Israel literally arguably perpetuated the worst genocide in modern history, completely wiped a city off the map, essentially, and they get to have a team. People were booing them as they were walking out in the stadium, which I don't know. I mean, the athletes have nothing to do with it. I don't have any hate for them, but for whatever reason, I guess, yeah, I guess it's fine if Israel gets to walk out and wave the flag, but Russia doesn't. I guess that's the standard that we're working with. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with the Olympics. And there's one last thing before we start. There was a tweet that I put out a couple days ago, which I just wanted to highlight because got some interesting responses to this. So there was after the Conservative National Convention, or the convention for the Conservative Party of Canada, there was a politician that, well, one MP that essentially came out and said she was going to oppose the vote on banning medical gender transitions for minors. And there were a number of MPs that voted against this measure, saying that they were in support of it because they thought that the measure was too divisive and they didn't want to splinter the party or take attention away from Pierre Poilievre's victory, right? They didn't want the headlines to be about, oh, look at what the Conservatives voted for. They wanted it to be more so, look at the popularity of our leader, right? And at first, when you think about it, you're like, okay, I guess I kind of understand that because politics is optics, right? Optics have a large role to play in that. But my takeaway or my feelings towards it is, if you're not actually about the mission, if you're not about standing your ground and defending values and belief systems that are fundamental to what your party stands for, then you shouldn't really be in politics. This kind of flip-floppy, wishy-washy bullshit, it has no place in politics, or at least it shouldn't, right? It absolutely shouldn't. So I wrote this tweet saying that, I mean, this is exactly what you get with women in politics. Because fundamentally, right, the one of the main differences between men and women is how our survival instincts have evolved throughout the millennia. And for men, because we have the physical advantage, that is what we rely on, right? How strong are we? Can we kill, enough animals to bring back to the tribe? That's how we're built. We're hunters. And women, because they don't have that strength, that they haven't evolved to the point where they are equals to men in that stance, or in that sense. They have to rely on social dynamics, right? Women are social creatures, fundamentally. That is their whole modus operandi throughout the evolutionary process. Because they can't, game their evolution through strength, through shows of physical feats, they have to do it socially, right? So they have to understand the social hierarchy within whichever culture or society they live in, how to navigate it, how to come out on top, how to select for the best mate, right? That is their entire decision matrix. And so if that is how they're approaching life, if that is how they're going about navigating society, then that's fundamentally not opposed, but incompatible with the political process. Because when you have that kind of energy, right, the focus on, okay, how do I get as many people to like me, regardless of what I believe in, but because I need to get this message across, yes, that is certainly part of the political dynamic and the part of the political establishment that we live in, right? PR being one of the main methods through which that is propagated. Excuse me. While that is a main mode of operations for many people in that kind of sphere, you can't have that when you're trying to stick to your principles. You can't have that when you're trying to draw a red line, right? Crossing a line in the sand, saying that we are going to stick with this idea, not because it's going to make us popular, not because, we're going to get so many votes, but because it's right. Because fundamentally, this is the correct stance to take. We can't allow for the propagation of this idea that men can become women and women can become men, and that we have to push this on children for whatever fucking reason, right? This has no place at all in a well-functioning Western liberal society, right? Western liberal democracy. This has no. It shouldn't have any legs to stand on. This idea is fundamentally opposed to where we should be headed as a species. We can't just be thinking that men and women are interchangeable. We can't just be thinking that or bending the knee to people who consider it interchangeable. Right? But because, once again, right, because women have this this lens through which they see the world, which is fundamentally different than men. Right? That's why you have this the classic problem is there's I remember that there's that one commercial. There's a woman sitting on the couch. There's a nail in her head, and she's complaining how much it hurts and how much pain it's bringing her. And the man beside her, her partner, is saying, "Well, why don't you just take it out?" Right? And the woman gets mad because fundamentally there's two things happening. Right? The woman, she just wants to be acknowledged. She just wants to be heard. To be told that, okay, that sucks. I understand that you're dealing with pain. That must be an awful experience. They want to hear that. Right? That's the women's perspective. But the man's perspective is a problem-solving one. Okay, well, you have a nail in your head, then just take it out. No shit. And that's why, like, we have these, different marital and couple disputes where men and women are just operating on a different wavelength. They see the world completely differently. In part because of how they have evolved, right? Because the evolutionary process for men has given them certain advantages, and the evolutionary process for women has given them certain advantages. And so when they kind of butt heads, when they kind of meet in the middle, they're not always going to be able to see eye to eye. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just, that's life. Yeah, no shit. Men and women are different. We're going to see problems in completely different perspectives, right? We have completely different motivations when it comes to jobs, when it comes to making money, accruing influence, right? The reason that men work so hard and buy all these nice things, it's not because they're going around to their boys and being like, yo, check out this car, check out this house. And there's always going to be a certain amount of them that are just going to want to, flash cash and show all that off. But that is a minute group of men. The people that are actually doing that for the majority, it's the men that are doing it because they want the attention of women. How many cathedrals, how many feats of engineering, how many man-made creations beyond our imagination have been dedicated to women, right? In the pursuit of women, in trying to show that you're actually worth something as a man. It's always for women. Almost all of the time, it's for women. Because we want to show that we're capable, we want to show that we can show up, that we have something to contribute, right? 99% of the time, it's for women. 99% of the time. And that is very different compared to the motivations that women have towards selecting a mate, towards finding a job. There's a reason why women are overrepresented in fields where they have to take care of people, take care of children, right? Healthcare industries, education industries, any industry that involves any kind of level of socializing. I mean, HR. You look at any HR department within a company, it's majority women. It's majority, if not all, women, right? Because they're managing people. That's their whole game. That's what they do. They exist in the social milieu of whichever organization that they're a part of. That's just how they fundamentally work. That this is just a fact of life. We have to recognize that. And there's a woman that commented and said, "Oh my God, you're so misogynistic." What is misogynistic about that? I didn't say that women should be barefoot in front of the stove and not move away from the kitchen. At no point did I say that. All I did was I pointed out that Men and women have fundamentally different ways of seeing the world. Of their motivations are different, and so this motivation it forces them to choose different paths and make different choices, and we have to recognize that. I mean, this is just acknowledging reality. And if we're not going to acknowledge reality, then I mean, what the fuck are we doing then? What's the point of it? And so that's why it's just I wanted to just talk about that, because this is a point that often gets misconstrued with misogyny. People think that by pointing this out, you're some kind of a chauvinist, that you want to knock women down. It's not about knocking them down. It's about realizing that men are built for certain things, women are built for certain things, and men should not be in certain positions and women shouldn't be in certain positions. Once again, that's why women are overrepresented in child-caring positions, caring for the elderly, caring for the sickly, right? Therapists. Anything that has to do with navigating social dynamics or helping people navigate social dynamics, it's always going to be dominated by women. Their brains are literally built for it, right? That's why you don't see a lot of female bricklayers. You don't see a lot of female rig workers. You don't see a lot of them working construction. And the few that do, they're the exception. They're not the rule. Right? So this weird little hang-up that we have in the 21st century, that because men and women are different and recognizing that difference is somehow bigoted. I'm sorry, but that's retarded. that's retarded. I'm not gonna kowtow to somebody just because they call me what does she call me? A misogynist. Yeah, like, no, I refuse. That's a complete rejection of reality. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? So anyways, yeah, no, I just wanted to point that out because look, like, instead of actually sticking to her guns and being a true to heart conservative, she decided to vote for this because she liked the optics better. I mean, that's the most female thing that you can do. Because she's worried about her social standing in the party. She's worried about the party's social standing in Canada. She's worried about the names that she'll be called. I don't think men are as inclined by that. Or at least if they are, they shouldn't be. They really shouldn't be. We're meant to problem solve. Right? That's what the whole process is for. And women like this that are operating in politics, they don't, I would say they don't really belong there. I really don't think they belong for the most part. They'd be much better served being wives or mothers or what have you, just playing their role. Play to your strengths. Because this is not it, man. This is not it. Without further ado, that being said, we'll get into today's topic of Whitepill destroys the left. Yeah, let's this one's gonna be a doozy. Let's get into it. Okay, so starting off with the premise that the Dominion Society, right? This group that I've posted about before, just to jog you guys' memory here, if you've forgotten, they're essentially a political movement within Canada that is trying to bring the idea of remigration to the mainstream, to advocate for the quote-unquote heritage Canadians, so people that have been here for generations, people that have ties to Canada that don't involve them coming from non-European countries, right? People that actually built a nation. They're trying to speak to those kind of people and Canadians in general, but mostly the heritage Canadians in their mission. And so part of their mission is to talk about remigration, right? Because how else are we going to get all these illegals out? How else are we going to remove the people from society that are not only a burden, but their beliefs are fundamentally incongruent with what we're trying to build in Canada? Right, that one episode that I did, it was called "Deport Them All," where I talked about the founding principles of Canada, peace, order, and good government. That there are entire swaths of the global population that just they don't share these beliefs. They don't come from nations that share these beliefs, and so when they come here, they cause a lot of conflict because they bring those belief systems here, and they're fundamentally right? Not compatible with what we're trying to build in Canada. So we got to get them out, right? And that's what they're advocating for. And I took a long walk a couple days ago where I was just thinking, well, okay, well, this is nice, right? This is a good start. It's a good place to start. But we need something to come after that. We need something to follow that. Because remigration, this is just but the first step, right? Getting these people out is but the first step, right? Of returning to any semblance of normalcy in Canada. And what needs to happen, right? The conclusion that I came to is that we have to, in a sense, destroy leftism and make it so unpopular to hold these ideas that it's akin to being like an actual Nazi, right? This is the label that we have to push on this set of ideas. And when I say we have to destroy leftism, I don't mean that we have to destroy liberalism, because liberalism, it has a role to play in society. You know, the conservatives, their main role is to conserve the founding ideals of the nation, the founding cultural forces of the nation. You know, what actually built all this infrastructure and all these cultural institutions and all this history. There's a value in conserving that, right? There's that classic. I think I'm going to butcher this, but there's this classic, like, it's not a brain teaser, but it's this idea that, you know, if you come up to a fence post in the wild, right, your first instinct shouldn't be, let me just tear this down because I need to make my way through. Instead, you have to consider, okay, why was this put up, right? There's a reason why this was put up. And so the conservative, you know, would advocate for that. But there are times when certain social norms or cultural norms or just ideas in society, they have to be pushed, you know, through the Overton window. There are certain dynamics that have to change culturally, socially, nationally, that you can't really have without liberalism, because that's their whole idea. They're supposed to think of new and novel ways to view the world, to view society, you know, conduct different experiments. Like, that is the strength of liberalism. It's supposed to allow for the flourishing and the development of new ideas and new perspectives. And there's a certain value in that, right? Both of these things, right? Conserving what was the instincts and the stories and the experiences that built a nation, there's a value in that. And there's also value in pushing the boundaries. And these two things have to coexist, right? Ideally, they coexist harmoniously in society. And so you have this opposing force all the time, so that the conservatives aren't, you know, just fundamentally strangling the nation from actually advancing any further, because you have the opposition of the liberals pushing society forward, right? Like, we're not using abacuses anymore. Okay, we got computers for it, right? There's certain advancements that we have to adopt if we're gonna meet the moment, if we're gonna live up to our own expectations. There's certain advancements that we have to make, and so this opposing force is needed, right? This back and forth of left and right and left and right and left and right. It's a necessary part of society, especially in a democratic one. But there's a point where the liberal left, and not just the liberal left, but the leftists, right, the extreme left, where their cultural domination is actually no longer tenable. And we've gone way past that point. We have gone way past that point. We have tolerated way too many extremes on the left. Way too many. And no matter how much the news, you know, Joe Biden said in his last year of the presidency that the fundamental force within America that is the most dangerous, that we have to watch out for, is white supremacy. Like, as if we're having a million men march of KKK swastika wielding jackboots going down to the White House. When in reality, we don't. We actually don't have that problem. We have the opposite problem. We have the problem where it's the left that's doing these things. right? And the reason why I'm framing this as a left versus right issue is because fundamentally, the extreme left, they are putting not just an unnecessary, but a detrimental and suicidal amount of energy towards pushing their ideas on greater society. Okay, because a high trust society, right, an open society, a democratic society, allows for the flourishing of new ideas, which means there has to be a dialogue, right? People have to be allowed to speak. People have to be allowed to voice their concerns. They have to be able to say things that are going to be unpopular or considered controversial. Because if we don't have those discussions, right, at least out in the open, then we never really adapt, we never really change, we never really grow. You know, those conversations are uncomfortable. You know, they elicit certain reactions from people, but at the end of the day, it's fundamental. This level of discourse, we need to have it if we're going to have a functioning society. People need to be allowed to say unpopular things if we're going to advance anywhere. Otherwise, we're just stuck rehashing the same bullshit year in, year out. And that doesn't get us anywhere. Right? And so of all the protest action that, you know, we've all seen throughout all these years, which group, right? I'll give you a guess. I'll give you 3 guesses even. Which group is the one that's responsible for shutting this entire dialogue down? You know, the right is not showing up to college campuses yelling at people because they disagree with their take on abortion. The right is not going into churches and protesting. The right is not going out of their way to paint people as racist, sexist, homophobes, to cancel them, to ruin their careers, to usher them from polite society, completely extradite them, extricate. Right? They're not doing that. It's not the right that's doing this. It's actually the left. And regardless of what your political ideology may be or what your allegiances may be, this is a fundamental fact. Leftism in and of itself and the hard left is a toxic, cancerous growth on society that needs to be not only cut out, but it needs to be made out to be exactly what it is, which is a toxic, cancerous growth on society. That's the way that it needs to be seen if we are to go anywhere, if we are to progress in any significant way. Right? These people fundamentally, these leftists, they believe that speech is violence. They believe that somebody speaking is going to actually cause physical harm to people. Right? And when you operate from that kind of perspective, you will justify anything. Right? When Charlie Kirk died, okay, so many people on the left were cheering for this or celebrating or feeling good about it. When in reality, what happened? We had a man that had amassed a certain amount of political power, right? He helped get Donald Trump elected by going on all these campus tours. But what was he actually doing? Was he holding re-education camps? Was he brainwashing people? The man was just having an open dialogue. Which, if you disagree with, okay, fine. That's, present a better argument. Present a different argument then. State your case, make it plain. But they didn't do that. They demonized him. They called him a racist, sexist, homophobe, transphobe. They did everything they could to cancel this man. And then eventually, when somebody radical enough put 2 and 2 together, speech is violence, and this guy is talking a lot, and he's allowing for these ideas to proliferate, and if I believe that he's the cancer of society, then I have to kill him. I mean, when's the last time that we had any amount of that kind of energy going towards someone on the left? I'll wait. Just take a second to think about that. When's the last time we had any kind of animosity towards someone on the left like that, to that extent? And then all these people cheered when he died. Which, look, whatever your opinion is on Charlie Kirk or his message, the man was just speaking. He was just talking. That was one of the the great things about seeing him operate was that, you know, whenever he would go to these campuses, he would let the people that disagreed with him go up to the line first and go on the mic and talk their truth. You know, that's actually going in with the spirit of open dialogue, of trying to see who has the best idea, of talking about all these issues and trying to come to some kind of a conclusion. Right? It was done in that kind of spirit, which is fundamentally, that's how a healthy society operates. You know, I might not agree with everything that my friends say, but that they're still my friends. I don't think that they're subhuman or less than, or that I'm better than them just because I hold a different opinion. And even forget friends, just passerbys. Like if I just, you know, have hear something in passing in conversation, my immediate instinct, and I would say the instinct of many people, it's not to demonize them and think, oh my God, what a cruel person. They should take their kids away from them. They should be fired. They should be removed. The majority of people, they're just like, okay, well, I disagree with that idea, but I don't think they should die over it. But these leftists, that's how they view the world. Right? They have these tenets of Marxism, post-modernism, these oppression hierarchies that they rely on, and anybody that opposes them, ideologically or politically or what have you, is essentially put on a shit list. I mean, the amount of cancellations that have happened from the left canceling somebody on the right, or even center right, it completely blows it out of the water compared to the numbers of people on the right trying to cancel the left. This is not it's not even an argument. And they do this because they think that they're justified. They think that because speech is violence and their speech, right, defends minorities, defends women, defends trans, defends whoever, right, that they're on the right side of history. And so they operate with that self-assured cockiness that they really don't deserve, this moral high ground that they've built for themselves, that they really have no business entertaining. I mean, these people wish death upon, they will wish death upon your grandma if she has a certain opinion on interracial marriage. They will go out of their way to find where you work, where you live, to fire you, to make sure that your reputation is ruined, that nobody ever hires you ever again. They will kill you. They will go out of their way to kill you, as was seen in the example of Charlie Kirk. Because they think that you're the devil. Right? And they're not just doing that to people on the right. They'll gladly do that to their own people as well if they don't adhere to their opinion. Right? We've seen this time and time again where leftists will turn on their own. I mean, how much footage have we seen of just these ICE protests, of them going against the average everyday person because they think that they're ICE? And they don't care how much proof they're presented with. They'll stop the cars, they'll check their plates, they'll assault and harm these people, even if the person is yelling at the top of their lungs, "We're with you." I mean, the best example of this was during Black Lives Matter. It was just, I mean, completely telling of the left. It was this house party. You know what? Let me just play this clip. Oh, come on. Oh my God. No, where is, okay, there's an infamous clip where there's a Black Lives Matter protest going on in the street, and this guy came to his window and he started like yelling chants for Black Lives Matter. Am I gonna be able to find it here? There we go. Here it is. Let me just play this real quick.
Why are you on We're on your side! We're on your side! Holy shit!
Yeah, if they're willing to do this to their own people, what do you think they're willing to do to you? I mean, that is completely just emblematic of leftists. Probably because they saw the guy's white skin and they're like, oh, he's making fun of us. He's going against us. He stands for the patriarchy. He stands for everything that we hate. And so they just threw a rock in their window. Like, what the fuck? Why would you think why would you even think to do that? What kind of a person does it take to just randomly throw a rock into someone's window like that? Just I mean, could you imagine just for a second what kind of mental gymnastics it takes to justify that and to think that you're right in doing that? This is what they will do. This is what leftists do. The moment that they even see a slight inference of somebody not going with the movement, somebody going against the movement, or anything being incongruent with their belief system, they will go after you and they will become violent. This is what they do. This is what the hard left does. And we forget that. We forget that all the time. that fundamentally, right? The whole basis for my argument tonight is that if we are to have a truly high trust society, if we are to return to any semblance of normalcy, where having an opinion that is considered controversial will not get you fired, if we're going to return back to that, right, back to pre-2010 levels of normalcy, of social dynamics, right, if we're not going to cancel people for saying a no-no word, we have to eradicate this ideology. We have to stamp it out. We have to strangle it in its crib. We have to kill it to the extent that we can kill an idea. Which, look, I've seen V for Vendetta. I know that idea cannot be killed, right? I get that. But we have to make it as unpopular. We have to make that as unpopular as possible, and it has to be social suicide to announce openly that you're a leftist. Because there is no other way. There is no other way to deal with these people. They won't even sit down and have an argument with you. They will show up in forces of tens and 20s and hundreds just to shout you out for having a different opinion. They will call your business, they will dox you, they will put your name on a list, right? They will do everything in their power to harm you. And fundamentally, I mean, this is why I have a layer of anonymity when it comes to doing this show. Why I don't talk too much about my own personal experiences, why I don't have my name, why I blur out my face. Because sadly, we live in the kind of world where this is kind of necessary. If you want to operate in talking about these opinions and trying to push the needle politically or socially, you kind of have to have a layer of safety attached to that, especially if you live in a country like Canada. Because there's a group of people that not only do they not share our ideals, they will do everything in their power to make sure that you have no platform, to make sure that you are not able to speak, not able to utter a single word, that you can't walk the streets thinking that you're safe. And this has been going on for far too long. We have tolerated this for far too long. And thankfully, we're getting some pushback now, and the right has gotten some balls finally. But we need to go further. We need to put the pedal to the metal here. We need to put the screws to these people. And not because I have some political or social disagreements with them, but because they will kill you reputationally or actually if they believe that you have a different opinion than them, or if your opinion doesn't go as hard as theirs does. Right? We can't have a just society when we have a group of people that are so militant about fucking opinions. Right? And it's not that they're just going after, like Trump or Pierre Poilievre or these major politicians. That's to be expected. They get this kind of hatred and ire thrown towards them regardless of what side they are on the political spectrum. But it's the average everyday person that has to speak in hushed tones, that can't say certain things out in public, out of fear that someone with a phone is going to record them and get their name and fire them. All because they disagree with them on an opinion. How crazy is that? I understand that we've kind of become numb to it and this is the state of things, but this is not normal. This is not the way that a society should be run. We can't just tolerate a group of people that are able to show up and shout out anyone that's trying to speak, right? Completely deplatform them, derail them from their mission just because they disagree. We can't tolerate that. We can't have an open exchange of ideas. We can't have any growth as a society with this group of people that are weighing us down. Right? And I mean, just to give a little perspective on what I'm actually talking about, right? Just how ridiculous some of these notions are, right? This is the infamous scandal, or rather, it's called the Grievance Studies Affair. So this was an initiative that was taken under by Peter Boghossian, James Lindsay, and Helen Pluckrose. And what they did was they wanted to identify, or rather, show to the world just how ridiculous some of these leftist talking points are, but not in a way that, they're sitting there and they're doing research and they're analyzing papers. No. They wanted to look at where this school of thought comes from and what kind of attitudes are accepted. Right, to speak in very general terms. So what they actually did was they essentially wrote up a bunch of fake papers that they tried to submit to academic journals. And quite a few of them actually got accepted, surprisingly. So they submitted 20 papers to academic journals. 4 were published, 3 were accepted but not yet published, 6 were rejected, and 7 were still under review at the time. Now, the reason why this matters is because in academia, right, when you're in university, if that is the path that you've chosen, that you're going to stay in academia for the rest of your life, getting published is of the utmost priority. Having the opportunity to do research or any of that kind of work, that is your bread and butter, right? Besides being a professor, publishing works and building that reputation, that is how you actually get your foot into the door. That's how you get those opportunities. That's how you get grants. This is their modus operandi. Right? The entire academic establishment is built on pumping out research and papers and studies, right? Or at least a good chunk of it is. And so to highlight the ridiculousness or the absolute absurdity, right, that some of these topics and some of these frames of thought have, what they did was they submitted a number of papers that, I mean, these ideas were just absolutely batshit insane. So let me read a quote here. Including among the articles that were published were arguments that dogs engage in rape culture and that men could reduce their transphobia by anally penetrating themselves with sex toys, as well as part of a chapter of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf rewritten using up-to-date jargon. So using PC and socially acceptable terms. Those are just some of the articles. Okay, and you're more than welcome to read it. This is going to be obviously posted in the sources for this episode, but this was just some of the articles that they had written. And for people that think, oh, this is crazy, there's no way this will get published, this gets published. Okay, all the time in journals. All the fucking time. And I know this for a fact because I studied social sciences in university, right? I took these programs. I was among these people. So this kind of frame of reference, this kind of, vision of the world that they have, it doesn't exist in a bubble. In some ways it does, but what I mean when I say it doesn't exist in a bubble, I mean that it doesn't just exist in academia and it's isolated there. A lot of people at the time were saying, oh, who cares about, these social justice warriors when this idea was just coming out and becoming culturally relevant. Who cares? They're just going to be in university. Well, they're going to graduate eventually, and they're going to go out into the world, and they're going to spread this propaganda into the workplace, into politics. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Right? And just as a little background, right? A lot of this stuff is built on the idea of postmodernism. And I'm not going to go too deep into the philosophical beginnings of the leftists or leftism. You're more than welcome to do that in your own time. And there's plenty of people smarter than I that have already covered this. So I don't really feel like rehashing it. But basically, for those who don't know, postmodernism, right? It's this idea. It's this idea that there's no universal truths, right? That we have to critique these grand narratives, like gender roles, right? Something that has been unquestioned for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, right? Has remained essentially untouched. Now we have to question it. We have to question the underlying fabric of society and why it exists. And what is meaning? Meaning is relative. Why do we ascribe meaning to some things above others and all that? And so this is where these dynamics of feminism, multiculturalism, post-colonialism comes about, because all of those things, right? Feminism is the fundamental idea of feminism was making it so that women are in some ways considered equal to men, right? The advocating of women's rights. But part of that means that you have to disarm or diminish the idea of gender roles, right? That's the angle that feminism has leaned into. That we have to take into consideration what is the role of the woman in the 21st century. Without the patriarch as the head of the house anymore, and women having more independence, which I would argue has done more to destroy the fabric of society than anything else. But that's a topic for another day. But that is where these isms come from: feminism, multiculturalism, post-colonialism, right? That's why it feels as though society is kind of crumbling from within. Why people say the West has fallen, right, is because we've abandoned religion as a guiding principle. We've abandoned the nuclear family as a guiding principle. We've abandoned all these bedrock structural load-bearing walls that used to hold up society, that used to give people an aim, that used to give people a goal to strive towards, right? We've abandoned all this because postmodernism came about, and there's nothing more fun than dismantling all these systems, than creating something new, right? But what did we actually get for it? What did we get for it? Birth rates are falling globally. Multiculturalism has led to ethnic strife, where now you have all these different ethnic enclaves within Western nations voting for their own, their own people, not even for the nation where they come from. The post-colonialism has led to people just completely advocating for the destruction of land rights, that we have to give all this land back to the indigenous for some fucking reason, right? All of these different things, they come from the idea of postmodernism. And the leftists, the people on the hard left, this is what they fundamentally believe in. So it's hard to sometimes see the link between the two, of where the hard left is today and the idea of postmodernism, but there is a direct link. When you just sit down and read it through, you realize, there is an actual, like, a genuine connection. These people fundamentally believe that we have to question every single underlying principle of society. Why do we have to live as though men and men are women are women? Why can't we believe that men are women and women are men? Or that, what is a woman? Whenever you see these people at a protest being asked, okay, so fine, you say that transgender women are women, but what is an actual woman then? Because you have to start from the basic argument or basic idea of what a woman is. Right, there has to be some kind of a qualifier, there has to be some kind of a description, but whenever you see these videos of them talking about this on a protest, they don't know how to answer, because it completely goes against their philosophy. It goes against their frame of mind. They can't have a static definition of a woman if they also believe that transgender women are women. You can't have the two. They're fundamentally incongruent ideas. You can't say that anybody gets to be a woman and define what a woman is, and then also say that a woman, her job is to raise kids and so on and so forth. You can't try to destroy the fundamental definition of an idea and then try to define the idea in the same sentence. It doesn't work. It's either one or the other. Right? And so this kind of idea, this kind of philosophy and frame of mind right? This leads to very, very destructive tendencies in society. Tendencies that fundamentally weaken us as a people, that weaken our minds, that weaken our social ties, our cultural ties. You know, postmodernism might be the rejection of meaning, but and I guess it's a nice philosophical exercise to do when you're in high school. But when this breaches containment, when this makes it out into the general world, I mean, look around you. This is what we get. This is we're living in a postmodern world. This is what we get from it. This is the kind of world that we get, where men can be women and women can be men, and children can make the decision to transition, where we can import millions of people that don't even hold our beliefs regarding the treatment of women or minorities or gays, that don't even abide by our traffic laws. I mean, this is exactly what we get. This is the kind of society that they build. Right? And so back to the idea of the university, right? Back to the idea that of like this is kind of where it all started, because university, you know, it's the first time when you're away from your parents, away from all your different social structures, you're trying to discover yourself, you're adopting all these new ideas. I mean, if there was ever a time to explore your own, you know, political ideology, different things that you believe in, university's that time, right? Or at least it's supposed to be, or at least it was up until the last 10 years or so, 20 years. I mean, the leftism has been propagated in universities for time immemorial, right? That's always been the place where people push all these different boundaries, but it's gotten to a point where it's no longer sustainable, right? Where people are actually thinking like a monolith, where you're not allowed to have an opposing idea, and you will stick out if you do. Right? I mean, this is the best example. I literally just found this scrolling my timeline today. I have other videos that I'm going to be showing you throughout the show, but this is leftists in a nutshell. Okay, this was a discussion where they invited a speaker to talk about. I don't even know what it was to talk about. Maybe it was Israel-Palestine relations. I have no fucking clue. But that is not relevant, right? What they're talking about is actually not relevant. But this is the reaction that some people had in the room to having a speaker that opposed their ideas. Just give this a listen.
USC. She's a Nazi. She's a Nazi. I haven't made my point, so she's gone. She has the right to be here on a public college campus. And we do too. This is part of a public college campus.
We are organized together in protest. We are executing our rights, and we say fascist free.
Yes, but you cannot engage in a heckler's veto. It's illegal. I will veto a Nazi. I will veto a Nazi. And you are going to get arrested. No one needs to get arrested. If you leave, you have a right to express your opinion. She has the right to complete a sentence.
Yeah, once again, and they always have the same look. They always have the same look. It's always they got a mask, they got colored hair, they have their fucking flag, and God, just because there's no way this is a woman. There's no way this is a woman. I will put all my life savings on the fact that this is not a woman. Right, and just the way that you heard them speak. Their voice is cracking too. Oh my God. Like, it's not as if they raised their hand and they had a question and they had an opposing idea to say. No. In the middle of someone's speech, they decide to get up and profess them and call them a Nazi. Like, really? Really? You're that emotionally immature? Or you're just yelling at the top of your lungs wearing your fucking dress or God knows whatever. And of course, yeah, they're wearing their mask. Of course. Yeah, they'll hide their face. Meanwhile, everyone else is just sitting calmly and listening. Everyone else that just wants to hear them speak. They're just sitting there calmly and listening. Meanwhile, these people are heckling them and calling them a Nazi. I mean, we can't have a dialogue. We can't have an exchange of ideas if we tolerate these kind of people. We can't. They're fundamentally incongruent with what it means to live in an open in a high trust society. If you can't even come to the table to have a discussion, you're just going to yell at me, you're going to shout me down, you have no place in the room. Right? Which is exactly why anytime that anyone calls you a racist, sexist, whatever, like gives you that kind of title, that's when you walk away from the conversation because they're clearly an unserious people. Right? It's one thing to look your opponent in the face and say, I disagree with you fundamentally, but I'm not going to disagree with your ability to speak and to say these things. It's one thing to do that. It's another to just like yell at the top of your lungs to the point where your voice is cracking. Get a fucking grip, man. Holy shit. These fucking people. And in a more recent example, right here in Canada, we had this woman, Frances Widowson, who is, from what little I know about her story, she was a professor, I believe, that was fired for having contrary opinions regarding the mass grave hoax that came about in Canada in the last couple of years. Yeah, it looks like she worked for Mount Royal University in Calgary. And so she came to speak, right, about these things to have an open discussion. She was just holding a forum. Let me see if I can find the video. I believe it's this one right here. No. This wasn't the one. But there's a video where she had set up like just a little stand in, corner in the quad where she was talking to this young man. Yeah, here it is.
What you have.
Yeah, where she was talking to this young man, just the whole time, and the young man, just as you'll see in the video, he was saying, okay, well, you believe in A, B, and C, but what about D, E, F? How do you adjust for that? There was an actual like a dialogue that he was starting. He didn't come at it from the energy of you're violent and you're a fascist and you need to be shouted down and so on and so forth. He actually came to had some questions as a curious university student, and you'll see as the video progresses. Right. Initially, they're talking about this, exchange of ideas.
Authorities were wanting to manage in various ways.
Right. So they're talking, and then towards the end of this,
Still think, although they might not have been trying to intentionally destroy them physically.
Yeah, that banging that you hear in the background and the fact that she has to speak louder is because all of these people showed up. So this woman comes on campus and tries to speak about an idea that's unpopular, but she has all the right to express this idea, right? Especially on a university campus. And instead of, coming to speak with her and present a different idea, they don't recognize her legitimacy in any way, just as a human being, right? Not to mention an elder, right? Whatever happened to respect your elders? That doesn't necessarily mean that you should have blind faith in everything that they say or that you should listen to everything that they do or afford them a certain respect no matter what they say and no matter how they conduct themselves. But all these grown 20-somethings banging on these drums, all it signals to me is you're unable to have an actual dialogue. You're unable to actually think through your opinion, and you think that making noise is the way to have your message heard, to disrupt, right? Not to come in and to have a better argument or to, own them with logic. No, it's I have to sit here and shout down this person because I fundamentally disagree with them and I don't think they should be on this campus. I mean, could you imagine doing that in any other sphere of your life? Your boss tells you to do something, and because you disagree with it, you just start yelling over them? Like, who does that? This has to be the absolute most retarded way of going about it. It's unbelievable. It is believable because this is just the the society that we live in. But the way that they justify it is they say, "Oh, well, her speech is violence. Her talking about this." calling the 215 dead bodies a hoax, that's violence. That's going to cause native people to actually have harm come to them. This is what they believe fundamentally. Which, I mean, with all due respect, that could not only be further from the truth, but that is not in any way. That is not in any way to treat a different opinion, especially on university campus. I mean, of all the places in society, of all the forums where you're supposed to talk about these ideas openly, the university campus, that is supposed to be the sacred one. I really don't understand why these administrators, right, the people that are supposed to be heralding the next generation, helping them meet the challenges of tomorrow, the people that are supposed to be molding the minds of the next people in charge, why they don't see this as serious as they should. It's very strange to me. I find it weird. I find it very weird that they think that this is acceptable in any way. And here's another protest that happened at the University of Winnipeg, where the exact same thing happened. She came to speak, and this is how they reacted.
Women present at the event gradually got into a circle around Widowson.
Yeah, I can't bear to watch any more of this. This is just so it's so fucking insufferable. I can't tolerate this. Like, really? And then they poured a drink on her. Like that's someone's mom. That's someone's grandma. That's someone's neighbor. And like, this is how you treat them because they have opposing views? And I understand that we've kind of become numb to this because this is just a norm. But like, this is exactly why, okay? When I started my show talking about this female energy, this is exactly why all these movements, right? All the radicals, they're female. This is exactly why. Because they've abandoned their role as mothers. They no longer have to have that as their main focus in life. So all this maternal energy that they take, as I've made this point before on the show, they push it on these movements. They become mothers of these movements, and they treat them as if they're their children. They come at it with the same kind of energy and animosity. The same toxicity. Like, none of this needed to happen. Absolutely none of it. Why would you pour a drink on her? Like, just surrounding her? Do you realize how intimidating that is, especially for a woman? It's one thing for a man to stand in this crowd and be like, yeah, y'all ain't gonna do shit. I'm a man. I punched 3 times as hard as you. If anything went down, I'm fine. But as a woman, especially in her age, I mean, my God, like, this is why I say we need to destroy the left, right? This is exactly why I say we need to destroy leftism. You can't have a dialogue with these people. You can't have a debate with them. You can't even have a conversation with them. Because they think that you're the devil. They think that you stand for all the things that they hate. Your existence, okay, just the mere fact that you exist is an affront to them. And just to go even further, right? Let me talk a little bit about my experience in university. So I was studying social sciences at a university. I will not say which, but I was studying social sciences for a couple of years. And this same energy, right? This exact same energy that you've seen in these protest videos is exactly what I saw, word for word, every single day. If it wasn't in my class, then it was outside on the quad, because of a protest being held. And then if it wasn't in there, then it was in my friend group. It was in the people that I associated with. It was my professors. It was rampant. And anytime anybody, right, said an opposing opinion or said something slightly controversial and raised their hand in class, my God, you would be ostracized. People would not talk to you. People would kick you out of friend groups. People would make sure that they did everything in their power to ostracize you. Everything in their power to ostracize you. And I even remember the best example of this. I took a senior level class. Well, I didn't take it, but I audited it. I got to sit down in this senior level class, thinking, oh man, these are fourth years. They're about to finish their degree. They're talking some high level stuff. I was thinking, okay, this will give me some exposure. I'll be able to participate because I truly believed in the mission. I chose the social sciences because I fundamentally I wanted to better understand society. I wanted to understand how it operates, right? How we operate as individuals, as groups, what I could do in my own little part to improve it. Right? I'm not trying to just, blow hot air or or talk myself up, but I'm just saying this is the perspective that I went in with it. I was truly of the mind that university is, as I had been told all my life, right, was the place for the exchange of ideas, where you would go to have your boundaries pushed, where you get to learn all these new, crazy, interesting things about the world and how society functions and history and all these different dynamics. I was truly excited for the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this for years. My entire life, this is what I was told, and it could not have been further from the truth. I was sold on a lie just like millions of other people. I was sold on a lie that people could talk about opposing opinions openly, that people could have disagreements, no matter how fundamental they were, and they would still be able to shake hands and call it a day. That could not have been further from the truth. And so in this higher level class, I remember there was a discussion that we were talking about the role of groups in social movements and the role of the actual people that carry the message. Because you always have the supporters, but you always have, the handful or however many people that are actually going up to the podium, right? There's a selected few that actually have the chance to do that. And the example that we used, I remember, was in 2008 when we had the financial crash. And subsequently, you had the Occupy Wall Street movement, right? As I've said before on the show, part of the reason why it kind of fell apart was because there was no clear leadership. Too many people were advocating for their own selfish ideas. All these different philosophies around feminism and intersectionality came into play, right? It splintered itself because there was no unifying principle beyond, the slogan of "We are the 99%," right? But there's a video that we saw when they were having some kind of a speech. I think they were just trying to, better organize the protest or gain some kind of organizing principles. And the lady that was at the microphone, I'm gonna have a really hard time finding the video, but the lady that was at the microphone, she basically said, anybody who has benefited from the current system as it exists needs to step back and let those that have been wronged by it the most speak. Right? This is the idea that, especially you'll see it in BLM, where white voices should take a step back to black voices because the black lived experience, this is the one that we have to highlight. Right? It's in the same kind of vein. And so we were talking about this as a tactic. And I pointed out to my classmates when, I raised my hand and I said, well, if the point of the movement is to advocate on behalf of the aggrieved, of the 99% of all the people that are getting fucked over by Wall Street, ideally, if we're going up against such powerful forces, shouldn't we just get the best orator, the best speaker, the best person for that position to actually speak on behalf of us? Shouldn't we just do that? Because if we highlight too many of these personal experiences, we're just going to get lost in the weeds, because then we're looking for the paraplegic, transsexual, black, indigenous midget, because they win the oppression hierarchy, right? They have been the most oppressed. They are considered the minority of minorities, seeking for that mythical minority unicorn. That's what the whole thing is going to become. And then you're not highlighting experiences or voices or even opinions that are in any way advancing the cause of the movement. Then you're just talking about, oh, I have a story to tell and I've been wronged, so I'm going to go up and tell it because on this scale of the oppression hierarchy, I am the highest. I am the best priority. Right? That's essentially what I pointed out, is that the problem is that now the movement no longer becomes about achieving something. Now you're just talking about grievance politics. Now you're just talking about, I was wronged, and my experience as a black woman makes that unique. My experience as a gay woman makes that unique. My experience as a transgender makes that unique. When for my thinking, I thought, well, shouldn't we get the best ideas out there? Shouldn't we get the best orator, the best representative? Shouldn't we be intentional about this? And I'll never forget this senior student, this woman. Of course, it's a woman. She comes out and she says, "Oh, well, I would of course step back, because I could never think that my experience trumps that of black women, of disabled women, of indigenous women." Just kept going off and off and off and off and off. And in my head, I was just thinking, just because you're black doesn't make you right. Just because you're not disabled, or just because you're disabled, it doesn't make you right. It doesn't actually add credence to your opinion. Your lived experience has nothing to do with that. It's, can you argue the point? Can you present a unified front? Can you actually organize these people, right? Tangible things that actually matter for social movements. Can you rally people behind a cause? That's fundamentally what matters. Can you capture the cultural moment? Right? That's what matters in a social movement. It's not how low or high you are on the oppression scale. I couldn't believe it. I was genuinely dumbfounded. I was like, this is senior level thinking. This is what your 4 or 5 years of university have come to. This is the perspective that you're coming with. I mean, it was a completely mask off moment for me. I realized, like, oh, these people are deranged. They actually believe in this. They think that, like, the people that have been fucked over the most, regardless of how articulate they are, of how effective they are presenting their case, regardless of their social capital, of their cultural capital, they have to be the ones to speak just because they're at the top of the oppression hierarchy. Really? And this is what they fundamentally believed. You know, there were times in university where I would hear speakers would come to our campus and they were just shouted down because these people couldn't tolerate them. It's from that exact same type of energy. Their framework, right? Their frame of reference is built on the fact that this mistaken theory, right? This absolute just complete retardation that, oh, because white men are overrepresented in history, that means that they're bad because they perpetrated all these evil crimes, completely not acknowledging their accomplishments, not the fact that they built the nation, not the fact that the majority of the white men, okay, it's not all white men, the majority of white men were eating shit. They were the ones going to war. They were the ones working in mines. They were the ones setting up the oil rigs. They're the ones that have to get up at 3 a.m. to fix your power lines. The ones that have to fix the road, that whenever there's a violent incident, the men have to step in, right? Completely just like rejecting that. And their frame of reference was, oh, all these old white men in these history books running the world, it's all their fault. Yeah, it's a select, it's a minute percentage of white men. The majority of white men were working in the shit can. They're going down into the mine shaft, shaking hands with the devil, just so that they can put food on their table, and they're the ones that are evil too. They're a part of this, right? Their frame of reference is built on this ideology that we have to reject all of the ways that we've lived in the past. We have to find something normal, or rather, sorry, find something new, develop something new to overtake that, because by default, right, by default, these systems only exist if oppression happens, only if people are put down. Right? Does anybody at any point stop to think, what is the contribution of white men to the quality of living? No, they don't. They don't, and they never have. And even forget like the white category, just men in general, right? Because this doesn't just pertain to white men. They expanded it to all men, regardless of race. White men were considered the devil, but if you were a man, no, you were considered shit. And I even remember in my last year, sorry, 1 second. Just a little too warm. I remember one year in university, I just needed enough credits to go on to the next year, and the only course, because I, like a retard, I'd neglected to sign up ahead of time. The only course that was available was feminism, and I was thinking, well, it's either that or I do a science course, and I'm shit at science, so I took the course, and it was exactly as you'd expect. It was exactly as you would expect. I remember in my first day there, a woman with piercings looked over to me before the professor started speaking, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." And I asked her, I'm like, "What? Why do you say that?" And she's like, "Oh, we need more allies. We need more men. We need more men to be part of this, be part of this movement." And I realized, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Oh my fucking God, what did I get myself into? Now we're using words like ally. Jesus fucking Christ, I knew exactly what to expect. And so the funny thing about that class, right, is that the idea of feminism, even though it has, feminine in the word, the idea is that it's supposed to argue for, to put it succinctly, an equality among the genders, right? It has feminism, feminine in the word, but it's supposed to advocate also for men to an extent, if we're to have an equality, right? And the only two lectures that actually talked about men and their experience, right? Not the fact that men have the higher suicide rate, not the fact that men have the much higher rate of losing custody of their children when it comes to custody battles in court, right? The mental health issues of men, the addiction issues of men, none of that. None of the actual lived experiences of men. There were two lectures, and one of them was about men raping. So men raping women. Not even like men getting raped in prison. Not even like talking about that. No. It was about how men were talking about some dialogue on men raping women, and I think that the second thing was something about their representation in the workforce. Right? But this class that's supposed to talk about, the equality of the genders, right? As they're trying to march towards that goalpost, that's what they're aiming towards with their ideology. None of it at any point covered, hey, maybe there's like an overrepresentation of men in suicides. Maybe there's an overrepresentation in the amount of men that drop out of university, that women actually do better. Maybe there's an overrepresentation in men in violent crime. Right? Maybe they're in need of rehabilitation. Maybe they actually need a hand. Nope. That class did not give a fuck. Every single class was women, gay women, black women, trans women, whatever the fuck. Which, fine. Right? That's to be expected from a feminist course in university, right? Fuck me for expecting anything different, I guess, right? But I was just thinking, like, philosophically, like, that's what you're if that's the approach that you're taking, if you're actually looking to approach the idea of feminism, the idea of gender equality through a purely academic sense, forget ideology, forget your own personal ambitions. But if we're actually approaching it honestly, the class should have been 50-50. Half the lectures on men and their experience and their struggles and what they go through, and half the experience and half the classes on women. Right? If we're actually talking about gender equality, isn't that supposed to be the whole fucking point? But no, I guess, yeah. What a surprise. The professor just hated men. I mean, that's the energy that she took to her classes. And not even, even forget academia. The social side of university was completely dominated by the left. I remember in my first couple of years in university, I signed up to be, not to be a counselor, but like to essentially help with Frosh Week. Right, so you'd be somebody that would be helping supervise all these froshies and help attend these events and organize them and all that. Because I was thinking, man, like I had such a great time in Frosh Week. Like I want to give back. I want to volunteer. And I remember vividly to this day, we were walking with our group towards some kind of party or event that we were going to. And all of a sudden, as we're walking up, one of our guides, one of our leaders was just ahead by, like 20 meters ahead, and she was yelling at somebody. So we get over there and we realized that she saw a guy wearing a bandana over his face. And during Frosh Week, it's not uncommon to see stuff like that. People completely drenched in body paint and wearing ridiculous T-shirts and doing their hair all crazy. No, that's the whole thing. It's the fun of it. You're supposed to show your spirit, right? Your spirit for the university, for having fun, and it's supposed to be this time that we all just kind of go a little bit crazy for the first week of university, kind of just dip your toes in. And she's yelling at him, and we come to realize that she's yelling at him because the argument that she's making is that people who grew up around gangs are going to be triggered by seeing this bandana. And she was yelling at the top of her lungs to get him to take it off. And I was just stunned standing there because she was a couple years my senior, and I didn't really have a leg to stand on or say anything, even though I really should have. But just the fact that she was so aggressive, this white girl coming from the fucking suburbs advocating on behalf of people that she doesn't even hang around because somebody might get triggered. Like, it wasn't as if somebody that came from like a gang-infested neighborhood saw that bandana and was having like a panic attack or an episode or what have you. No, she was advocating on behalf of this imaginary person that might at some point see a guy covered with a bandana. I mean, that's the kind of energy that they take towards these things. That's the kind of rabidness that they approach these issues with. They will shout you down. They will do everything in their power to make sure that you don't get to speak, to wear certain things, to have certain ideas, even if it's as frivolous as a fucking bandana over your face, wearing the school colors, mind you. The guy wasn't even like a gangster. He was wearing the school colors. He was trying to show pride for the school in his own little way. It's a fucking bandana. As a guy, I walk past that and I think, oh, cool, that's nice. Where do I get one? But I guess as a woman, she decided to just completely go full tilt. And I even remember during the what's it called? The orientation. During the orientation for the guides, there was a moment where they handed us a sheet of paper with a flower drawn on it. And it was the intersectional flower. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it was something along the lines of this. It was something along the lines of this, where you essentially would color in the flower if you pertained to any of these kind of privileges or identity groups, right? And I'm just thinking, sitting there, I'm like, okay, but this has, I mean, shouldn't I be getting trained on like what to do if somebody is ODing or they've had too much alcohol, or how to watch out for the signs of too much alcohol consumption? Because that's really the only thing you have to worry about as a guide. is I'm responsible for these young adults who are now for the first time leaving their parents' homes. They're leaving their, the confines of their safe environments that they've grown up in all their life, and they get to taste freedom. And some people are going to overdo it. It always happens. There's always going to be somebody that gets too high, gets too drunk, gets a little handsy, what have you. And you have to watch out for that as a guide. Right? That's our whole thing. We're responsible for these students because God forbid something happens to them. That not only comes back to us, but that then comes back on the university. What kind of a frosh week are you guys holding where these events can happen and all these scandals and people lose their jobs? Like, right? There's a potential for reputational suicide if something goes wrong at one of these events, at one of these parties. Right? Because it wasn't just like going out into the quad and holding hands and singing Kumbaya. Like we'd taken them to the clubs and bars and done all these, drinking events. So instead of learning all of that, we're learning about this stuff. We're learning about these oppression flowers. For what? What benefit does this bring for anyone to actually take the time to learn? Like they just handed out this sheet as if it was a given, as if everyone believed in it. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what the fuck does this have to do with anything? And the one guy in the group that actually spoke out and said, "Why are we doing this?" He was essentially told, "Oh, well, you're more than welcome to leave. If you don't abide by this belief system, you're more than welcome to leave." And honestly, looking back, I should have done the exact same thing. I should have absolutely done the exact same thing. I really should have. I regret not doing that. I regret not standing by my principles. But I didn't have this understanding that like these people they believe this to a fault. They will ostracize you. They will shout you down. They will do anything and everything to make sure that you can't speak or say any kind of opposing opinion. And this bleeds through every facet of the university, from the classrooms to the social hierarchies to Frosh Week. Every single facet of university has this kind of energy attached to it. Every single one. And this is just my university, right? This dynamic exists across the entirety of Canada and across the United States and now Europe as well. Well, not now. Europe has had it for a while, but this is the dynamic. And so, as a student, if you're looking to get a job, if you're looking to get a placement, if you're looking to get a position, if you're looking to get into academia, what do? Do you swallow your pride? Do you hide your incongruent opinions? Do you just play it close to the vest? You have a choice to make. That time in my life, I was more black-pilled and depressed, and I'll say this openly, I was more black-pilled and depressed than any other point in my life in that moment. Because I had truly believed, naively, I guess, that this was a place of an exchange of ideas, where I could speak openly, where we could disagree, but it's not going to go to fists, and I'm not going to be ostracized, and I'm not going to be canceled, where people are engaging with ideas earnestly, honestly. And that could not have been further from the truth. I mean, I even remember one of my professors, this was in my first couple of years, I had gone up to them and asked them about this new dynamic of people identifying themselves with objects. Right? There was a dynamic when, at the peak of Tumblr, that people were identifying themselves with like actual objects. They were identifying themselves. I think it was something kin. Object kin. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, people who feel psychologically connected to an inanimate object in a way. Right? This was an actual social dynamic, a social contagion that was spreading through the internet. And people were genuinely identifying themselves with this. I mean, look at this fucking wiki. A person who identifies as an object kin is a person who identifies as or feels connected to a specific object or number of objects. Objectkin are often misunderstood and dismissed due to their different qualities to other altered humans, much like plantkin people. God, these fucking... This just gets more gay and gay by the day. I mean, look at this. Fictosexual, cloud gender. What the fuck is cloud gender? Is a neurogender in which one's gender cannot be fully comprehended or understood because of depersonalization or derealization. They even have their own pride flag. So the rabbit hole goes much deeper than just the alphabet soup of LGBTQ AI plus 2, whatever the fuck the new acronym is. And I remember asking a professor, and I mean a professor, not like a young 30s, recent graduate, recent PhD. No. This man was a seasoned professor. He taught at multiple universities. He was teaching an intro course, and I remember asking him, I'm like, but do we, like, really, are we going to tolerate this kind of idea? Is this just normal? Is this the way that we're going to go through navigating life? We're going to tolerate some people believing themselves to be fucking objects? I didn't say it in that kind of tone, obviously, but when I asked him this, he said, well, the dynamics of the human mind are ever changing, and new ideas and ways of understanding how we exist in the world today. He just gave me this very general explanation, and I was like, dude, this is where you stick to your guns. What the fuck are you talking about? We're just letting anyone say anything now? This is what we're doing? Are you serious? You're the guy that's supposed to be making sure that ideas like this don't propagate. You're supposed to be the bulwark. You're supposed to be the man at the gates defending against this kind of bullshit, and you're supporting it? You truly think, like, he truly believed that it was perfectly fine and acceptable for people to believe these things? If you think that you identify as an object, you need to be put in a fucking mental institution. If you identify yourself as a fucking doorknob, I mean, this is like no joke. I'm not even joking when I say this. You need to be institutionalized. There is something fundamentally wrong with you. If you've dehumanized yourself to the point where you're identifying with an object, there is something just absolutely wrong with you. You need to be extricated from society and sequestered to a soft room where you can't hurt anyone. We can't allow these ideas to exist. We can't just be letting people go around thinking they're cats. Like that one infamous story that broke through on the Joe Rogan podcast all those years ago about a kid in his children's school that had a litter box set up for them because they believe themselves to be a cat and they're hissing at people. We can't have that. We can't have that as a dynamic. We can't have that as a belief system. It's one thing to say that, once you're 18 and you go off into the real world and you live on your own and you want to do that with your own time, you have a diaper fetish, whatever the fuck, you're a furry, fine, whatever. Who gives a shit? Right? You're an adult. You can do whatever the fuck you want. But in university, when these ideas are being molded, this needs to be stamped out. This needs to be not only dismissed, but openly laughed at and ridiculed. But this is what postmodernism does, right? Once again, that idea that we need to deconstruct all meaning. We need to deconstruct the entirety of society. We have to reject all these baseless forms of male, female, of man, woman. Right? This is exactly how we get the same headlines of elderly men, right, believing themselves to be 6 years old. This is exactly how that same kind of energy, that same kind of mentality comes up. We can't tolerate that. We need to ridicule it. We need to exorcise it from society. We can't have these kind of ideas floating around. We can't have people believing they're fucking babies. We need to stamp it out. And if you want to believe in that, fine. Just get prepared to be laughed at a lot, because that's the least that you deserve. What an absolute ridiculous notion. These people should be seen the exact same way that guy on TLC that was in love with his car. Like this guy right here. The amount of people that are laughing at him and ridiculing him as he did this, yeah, this is you deserve that. What do you expect? right? We can't recognize it as legitimate. We can't start talking about, oh, we need to start recognizing marriages between men and cars, women and cars, what have you. We can't be accepting of that idea, because then the idea of marriage completely goes out the window. What's the point of what a marriage is then? What's the point of it? This is fucking weird. This is fucking weird, and it needs to be ridiculed. It needs to be laughed at. These kind of ideas, I understand that some people might think, oh, well, what's the link between a university? If you identify yourself as a doorknob, you could just as easily identify yourself as in love with that doorknob. I mean, my God, the amount of things that I saw in university, the trigger warnings, the lectures, the certain things that people would say. There was a moment where at my university, there was a men's rights group that was trying to start up a club. They were just trying to advocate on behalf of men's rights. And they were shut down. Not only were they shut down, I'm pretty sure my university like made it a bylaw within the university that no men's rights groups could exist. Even though in the same vein, all the feminist groups that existed that are like just bold-faced against men, openly talking about we need to destroy the patriarchy, that men rule over us and we have to dominate them because they've been dominating us for all these years. All this anti-male rhetoric, that was allowed. Right, but the second that men wanted something in their own corner, they wanted to somebody to advocate on behalf of their own issues of depression and custody of children, all these different things. Like the moment that men were like, "Hey, let's make a group of our own," the university was like, "Fuck no, you don't. No, you don't, because that could open the door to extremism. That could open the door to some crazy and kooky ideas." Okay, you mean like how the feminists are talking about that? We need to decolonize them. We need to push them out of their field. We need to have more women working in their field instead. We need to reject this idea of masculinity. The same people that are advocating for this, they get to have their own little corner, but we don't. Men don't get to advocate for themselves on their own behalf. Okay. You know, when I would hear stories like that, it once again, this was the most blackpilling time of my life, because the idea of a university, this thing that I was sold on, could not have been further from the truth. These people didn't care about having an honest dialogue. They didn't care about having a conversation. They knew they were right, and they wanted to be told that they were right, and they allied themselves with people that also told them they were right. And when anybody came into opposition of that, they would shout them down. They would cancel them. They would advocate for their firing. They would do everything within their power to destroy them and their personal careers. You know, there was even a moment in class where we were discussing some kind of some social issue, and I vividly remember this girl telling me straight up in class, she's like, "Oh, but you're a man, you wouldn't understand that, right? You have all these privileges afforded to you, making all these assumptions about who I am in my life." And I was just thinking, who the fuck does this bitch think she is? She knows nothing about me. She just sees me and thinks that, oh, because he's a man, therefore he's had the same advantages as I believe all men have had. She doesn't know me. She doesn't know my background, but she didn't care. She didn't care. We were just arguing the facts of the issue, and she went and she made the point of singling me out based on my identity, because that's what women do. Once again, talking about, you know, what I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, that's what women do. That's why they're overrepresented in these movements, because these movements are all made, they're all based on the fact that you have to navigate the social hierarchy. You know, to what extent are you oppressed? You know, it's one thing if you're a woman, but are you a white woman? Or are you a black woman? And that changes how you navigate that hierarchy. Are you transsexual? Are you disabled? Are you indigenous? That changes your stance in the hierarchy. And so to knock me down a few pegs, instead of presenting a better argument or some kind of rebuttal to what I was saying, she just simply stood up and said, "Well, you're a man." As if that argument held any credence. Like she truly believed that she was in the right standing up and saying that. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, what does that have to do with what we're talking about? What does that have to do with me disagreeing with your opinion? Argue the point, you dumb bitch. Argue the fucking point. But I guess she didn't want to do that because that's what women in these movements do. That's what women do in general, but the women in these movements, they will attack you for your social standing in that hierarchy. You're a man, especially if you're white, back off. You have no place to be here. You are not welcome. You have to support us silently. Let the women speak. Right? So yeah, no wonder I was the most black-pilled in my life. Being completely sidelined. Being told that my opinion didn't matter because of some immutable category that I didn't even get to choose. I was born like this. It wasn't a fucking choice. What do you want me to do about it? I'm playing the hand I was dealt. And I was extricated. I was removed from friend groups. I was cast out essentially, just like thousands of other men on campus. The ones that didn't go along with this ideology. You know, and that changes a man. Then that changes a man in the way that he sees the world. And it's a shame because I was looking forward to university. I thought this would have been the time of my life. I thought that it was going to be an exploration of ideas, that I was going to meet people that were genuinely curious about the way that the world worked, but it just seemed like I kept encountering the same type of person for the majority of the time. The same type of person that had these monolithic ideas that changed ever so slightly every year as the lexicon got updated, as they got new terms that they had to use, but realistically it was the same thing. Where you are on the oppression hierarchy signals your opinion and how valued it is and what you can say and what you can do. And it's a shame because, not just a shame, but the university it's a fundamental aspect of society that needs to be allowed to have these open discussions. They need to defend the freedom of speech so rapidly, as to make it completely different than any other institution in society. Right? There's absolutely no question there. People need to have freedom of lateral movement to say the wrong things, to say the wrong words, to say controversial things, because otherwise, what happens? Otherwise, if the leftists just get enough people to show up at a speaking event, guess what? Now that speaking event isn't happening. They get to dictate the terms of the conversation, and the universities will defend them, because guess what? It's not just the students. It's the profs that are passing this down to them. It's the administrators. They all believe in this philosophy, in this way of life. They believe in it. They will defend it. The entire machination of university is built on that. You know, they'll do land acknowledgements. They'll create black-only spaces, which they did at my university, I thought we were going against segregation. I thought we were moving past that. But apparently it's okay if we create black-only spaces. It's mental. It's absolutely mental. Right? And just to kind of move on, because I don't want to talk too much about my own personal experience. But just to kind of end it off, it was thoroughly blackpilling. It was thoroughly blackpilling the way that people were shouted down, the way that I personally myself was dismissed. Because once again, like I tried to come at it honestly. I thought that when I started to learn about social sciences and sociology and psychology, like those are the coolest things. You know, learning about how society works, about how power works, about how influence works. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But they poisoned the well. They just made it so fake and gay that it wasn't sustainable. There's no future in that. And so naturally, yeah, I turned to the black pill. I was very angry for a very long time. I wasn't angry, I was livid. Because I felt robbed. I felt that these people had taken something, not just from me, but from everyone. Because here's the thing about the left. They're a very, very vocal minority And there's a good chunk of people that just go along with it because they don't want to make trouble. But if you give those people just, if you take them aside and you speak with them, chances are they're not going to agree with these rabid leftists. They're not. But they're going along with it because they want to navigate the social hierarchy. They want to get the grade. They don't want to rock the boat. They want to go ahead with what the professor says because they just want to graduate. They just need an A for the course. They just need to pass, whatever their justification. And until those kind of people speak up and say something, which I wish I had done more of, I honestly do. I duly regret not doing more to stand up against it because I felt so crushed. It felt impossible. No matter where I went, this ideology persisted. If it wasn't Frosh Week, it was my professors. If it wasn't my professors, it was my colleagues. If it wasn't my colleagues, then it was the university itself. With the kind of events that they put on, the kind of rhetoric that they use, talking about certain things. Yeah, it was fucking depressing. But moving on, right, just to highlight some of the ridiculous things that these fucking leftist retards believe. I can't believe that we got to a point where it was not only socially acceptable, but seen as morally right to advocate, and it still is in a lot of circles, to advocate for the genital mutilation of children, to advocate for the castration of children. And when I say castration, I say that because the kind of drugs that they use to stop the puberty process of kids, it is the exact same drug that they use on pedophiles when they're looking to chemically castrate them. The fact that this has been shoved down our throats as some major talking point, the transsexuals are like 0.001 of the population. 0.001%. It's a rarity. You don't encounter them in your daily life. They're not an overwhelming majority. Okay? There's not a pandemic of transsexuals. There's a pandemic of the ideology, which, once again, I mean, looking back on this century, right, when the history books are written in the future, this is going to be one of the worst atrocities that has been leveled against our own people. Because guess what, right? Here's the thing about the transgenderism, right? Whatever perspective you might have regarding, gender and people's ability to navigate that, your brain, your frontal lobe, does not form until the age of 25. And your frontal lobe, right? That is crucial to long-term decision making. Okay, that's why when you're young, you're not really seeing beyond your years. You're not really seeing beyond the consequences of your actions. In fact, you're not even able to comprehend that. In the same way that babies don't have object permanence, which is why when you go peekaboo, they think you actually disappear because their brain can literally, it can't fathom, it can't understand. It lacks the biological development to understand object permanence. In the same way that dynamic exists with babies, your frontal cortex, right, is the exact same thing except for adults. Your ability to make decisions that will have impacts in the future and your ability to understand that and to weigh these options doesn't really get formed until the age of 25 and even into your late 30s for some people, right? On average, that's the actual number. Or at least that's what I was told in psychology. That's at least what the leading scientists have said, right? So how is it that we think that it's a good idea, right? How is it that society has accepted that it's totally fine to allow people that don't even have their frontal cortex formed, that can't even drink, they can't even vote, they can't even operate a vehicle, but they can decide the most important thing in their life, right? Because your sexual organs, your drive to procreate, right? That is the single strongest drive that a human being has. This is once again, as I said before, right? This is what defines men and women fundamentally. It's how we go about evolution. It's how we go about procreation, how we go about selecting a mate. These are universally, or I guess previously understood to be universal principles that we can't fight against. Okay, women want to be mothers and men want to be protectors. This is the dynamic of society that has functioned for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And leftists will always come out and say, "Oh, but what about this tribe where the women are actually in charge and the men are the caregivers?" That's 0.001% of all history. The entirety of human history is built upon the fact that men are the protectors and the workers and the providers, and women are the ones that have to select for them. They're the caregivers. They have to make sure that they are the gatekeepers of the next generation. They're the ones that are watching out for who gets to advance and who doesn't. Right? That is their role in life. That is their lot in life. And so we think that giving the ability to fundamentally fuck with that dynamic to a child that doesn't even they can't even reach the gas pedal, they can't even drive, they can't even vote, they can't even move out of their own parents' house legally in most places in the world. We want to give them the ability to mess with that. We want to give them the ability to change their gender. Do you realize what happens to a person that makes that mistake and has to live the rest of their life with a mutilated penis or a vagina? Could you imagine what that does to a person? Right? A good chunk of your being, of your reason of existence, of your reason to get a certain job, to live a certain life, to care for people, that dynamic, that fundamental dynamic for men and women, could you imagine just doing away with that? What that even means? Can you even place yourself in the shoes of somebody that makes that mistake? What happens when, you go through your phase, right? Let's say that even 99% of these transgender surgeries worked and these people are living happily ever after, which they're not, right? Even if you look at the stats, the people that actually go forward with these surgeries, with these operations, they're not actually benefiting from it. The suicide rate of transsexuals, which has been hovering around 40% for the longest time, which is basically a coin flip. I mean, these people are genuinely mentally unwell and they need help, right? These surgeries don't even help them. It's literally a coin flip. Their suicide rate is 40%, and we're giving these people that power. Could you imagine what that means? More importantly, could you ever imagine having a child and this is the kind of thing that they want to do with their life and allowing for it as a parent, and then living with the fact that they regret that decision and you push them to do it, you encouraged them, you allowed for them to entertain those thoughts? I mean, your sexual drive, once again, that is your modus operandi for 99% of humans. That's why you get the car. That's why you dress a certain way. That's why you attend certain social settings. That's why you do for the most of what you do in life. That it's geared around that. You want to propel your lineage. We as human beings are driven to do that. So what happens when a subset of our population says, "I want to go the other way"? And they consist of children. Children who can't even go into the armed forces and put their life on the line, but they get to irrevocably change themselves, and we're championing this? Why is this even a leftist? How did we come to allow this? How did we come to allow leftists to preach to us on this? This is insane. In the next, mark my words, in the next 10, 20 years, when we start seeing these kids grow up, when we start seeing them actually go through their transition and what happens to them, and what they have to do on a daily basis just to survive, the hormone cocktail that they have to drink, the dilating that they have to do. For those who don't know, this is fair warning, this is pretty gross. But when they make an artificial vagina with a penis, what it does is it creates an actual gash inside of you. And to make sure, because it's basically like an open wound, to make sure that that wound doesn't close so that you still have a quote unquote pussy, you have to dilate it. So you have to take like a really like a dildo essentially and put it up there. I apologize for the graphic nature of this, but this is important to understand. Because this is what we're talking about. The transgenderism, it's not all fucking knee-high socks and wearing these pink flags and all this prettiness. No. A lot of it is ugly. It is ugly. You're talking about injections. You're talking about hormones. Breasts getting cut off. And so dilation, what you do is you literally have to stick a piece of plastic inside of that festering wound to make sure that it doesn't close. And how many of those wounds end up smelling like shit, end up having hair growing into them? I mean, a lot of this stuff is truly disgusting, and it's hidden from the public because what they call it, instead of transgender care, they call it gender-affirming care. Right? They'll find all this fluffy language for it, and they'll try to dress it up in the best way possible, but it is genuinely ugly. And you can always see a tranny. You can always tell, like 99% of the time, unless you go to Thailand. Thailand's got us beat. They figured it out. Okay, they're miles ahead. They're centuries ahead of the world on that. They got that new tranny technology. They're going to be the first ones to get genetic cat girls. But for the rest of us here in North America, you can always tell. If it's not the jawbone, if it's not the hands, the Adam's apple that's protruding, these people will never pass for women. They will never pass for men. And these kids they're sterilized with drugs that we use for sex offenders? Really? I mean, how can you defend that? And not even just to like talk about this, right? Because this story was huge. The Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic was the largest clinic, I think, in all of the UK, if not all of Europe, that was allowing for this gender affirming care, and they shut down. They shut down. Right? The reason that they shut down, in part, is because a bunch of whistleblowers came out and started talking about just how awful, I mean, just how absolutely demented some of the program facilitators were. Right? Let me just read this quote here. There was enormous pressure to process referrals rapidly, or more bluntly, refer children onto endocrinologists who would prescribe puberty-blocking drugs. Sometimes, though not often, this would happen after just an hour or two, staff said. Procedures for gaining consent to these potentially life-altering treatments were inadequate, and many of these children, staff explained, were vulnerable. Many were autistic. Many had been bullied. In some instances, after coming out as gay. Most were unhappy. These children had complicated lives and sometimes had suffered horrendous abuse or trauma, but this wasn't always explored properly before referring for medication. Because of course, why would you bother? Why would you let that get in the way of anything? Don't you want to be the one that virtue signals to your family, your friends, your social groups? Oh my God, I work at the largest gender-affirming clinic. I'm saving these trans kids. I'm saving their lives. I'm helping them be their best selves. Why would you let anything like, I don't know, reality get in the way of that? Why? Why would you? Right? And here's the other absolutely disgusting dynamic of this, right? The parents that are allowing this, the parents that are calling for this, the parents that are actually advocating for this, in a way it's kind of not evil, but there's a layer to it that makes it more sinister, because think about it. If you're actually a parent of one of these children and you're helping affirm their gender and affirm their care and all that, what do you think is the harder mental burden? To think that to believe that you did everything you could to help them transition? Is that harder to believe? Is that harder to assimilate to? Or is it much more difficult to think, oh my God, I have irrevocably harmed my child. I have made it so that they went beyond a point of no return. I have made it so that they have castrated themselves. They can't even get sexually aroused. They've mutilated themselves. They've removed their breasts, their penis, their what have you, done all these surgeries, thousands of dollars on the line, and their mental health didn't improve. Which of the two do you think is harder to believe in? And which of the two do you think parents are going to go with just for the sake of their own sanity? Because the last thing that a parent wants to do, a genuine and honest parent that's looking for the best, looking out for their children and wants the best for them, the last thing they want to believe is that they've irrevocably harmed them by their own action, that they've abused them somehow. So how likely are these parents going to be able to climb off their high horse and admit that they were wrong? Not very likely. Not very likely. And not even to mention like the kids and the transitions and all that. What about all the men and women that have lost opportunities? Mostly women, right? Lost opportunities or been exposed to these fucking these sexual deviants, these fucking perverts that we used to put up against a wall. And I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that we used to treat people that expose themselves to children a very different way than we do now. Because apparently now, if you're a man that identifies as a woman, you can just show your cock out. Here's a headline from the Toronto Sun. Transgender female swimmer 50 uses change room with young girls at Barrie event. Girls from age 8 to 16 in a Swimming Canada sanctioned swim meet in Barrie last week not only found themselves in the same pool as a transgender female swimmer, but in the same change room too. Parents confirmed that the person in question changed in and out of a swimsuit in the women's locker room on the East Bayfield Community Center during the December 1 Trojan Cup. We used to really put the screws to people like that. We used to make it so that if you behaved like this towards children, you got a physical beating of your life that you wouldn't forget. Okay, there's a reason why in prison, even they have rules against chomos, against child molesters. They're considered the lowest of the low, and they are attacked on sight. Because we as a society, right, I still like to believe that we as a society fundamentally think that that group, right, the vulnerable, the children, women too, but children, the elderly too, but in this case, children, they need to be protected. And people that wish harm upon them, that act harmfully upon them, whether sexually, physically, what have you, they need to be taught a lesson, one way or another. But apparently, because we live in this fucking upside down world, if you just say that you believe you're a woman, you're allowed to get away with it. You're allowed to expose yourself in front of kids. Great. I guess that's just what we're doing. Or, in the most infamous case with Leah Thomas. A man that by all means was, what the fuck was his ranking? He was in the low hundreds or 200s ranking when he was swimming as a man, and then when he goes to be as a woman, to play as a woman, to swim as a woman, his ranking just skyrockets. He's just he gets to perform on easy mode just because he gets to say that I'm a woman. This is insane. Why are we allowing for this? I understand that we've kind of moved past that peak. I understand that we've kind of moved past the peak of this craziness, but Jesus fucking Christ, the fact that it even got to this point, the fact that in many circles you can still openly talk about this, and if you defend Leah Thomas, then you're going to be considered maybe not a hero, but at least an ally. It's nothing short of crazy. It's absolutely nothing short of crazy. And there's more of these. There's thousands of these stories. Arlington residents say APS failed to protect children after sex offender exposed himself. Does that look like a trans woman to you? Does that really look like a woman to you? This is what we're calling a woman now? Really? Quote, after 7 News reported that a registered sex offender was charged with exposing his genitals to women and girls in a Washington Liberty High School girls' locker room, The Arlington superintendent and the Arlington school board chair addressed the community's concerns at a recent school board meeting. Quote, "We did not knowingly admit a sex offender into any of our aquatic facilities. Arlington Public Schools policy allows people to choose which locker rooms and bathrooms they want to use based on their gender identity, not biological sex, which is what allowed 58-year-old Richard Cox to use the girls' locker room multiple times at Washington Liberty High School." Yeah, because when you allow for anyone to identify as anything, when you come at it from this postmodernist take, right, what this ideology that leftists believe in, when you allow for that, there's going to be people that take advantage of it. There's going to be people that are like, oh, I'm a sexual deviant. I love exposing myself in front of people. All I have to do is pretend that I'm a woman and I get to just walk in and see all these prepubescent girls. Okay, I guess I'll just say that I'm a woman then. I mean, if we're just going to excuse that part of masculinity, that toxic group of people, that finite percentage of men that are absolutely just abhorrent, can't control themselves, because they do exist. This is a reality, right? There's a subset of men that genuinely are just freaks and need to be cast out of society and put into a dark hole because they're either violent, they're sexually abusive, mentally abusive, what have you. They're going to take advantage of that rule. And so what did they think was going to happen when they said men can be women and women can be men? And notice that the majority of these stories, right, as I've pointed out now, it's not women going into men's locker rooms and showing off their tits. It's men. It's men doing this because we understand as men that there's a percentage of us that are utter scumbags that you can't trust around women. You can't trust them to behave. And that men have to actually stand up to that. We have to be the ones to say, hey, you don't get to walk into a fucking change room full of children and expose yourself. Right? But because we've done away with the idea of masculinity and what it means to be a man, to defend the vulnerable, we don't have that now. Because the women entered the conversation, because the majority of people that are advocating for this are women. Right? Because once again, they're social creatures. They want to navigate the social hierarchy. They want to know what gets them ahead evolutionarily. And what will get them ahead in 2026 and all the years before that was, okay, there's this new ideology, intersectional feminism, new ideology regarding the gays. We have to be accepting of everyone. We have to accept this. We have to accept that. We have to play nice. We have to make nice. Because of that dynamic, because women have that tendency, this is what they allowed. And the men allowed this too. We stood back and we let this happen. You know, as much as I'm going to be talking about women on this podcast, it's the men's role too. We did not make enough of a stink. We did not do enough to protect people from this. Not to mention, right, this was the most infamous case at the peak of this crazy shit, right? This is a letter. This is a letter that was sent, I think this is Loudoun County? Was that in Utah? No, it's in Virginia. This is different. This is regarding a different case, because Loudoun County had infamously had an incident where I remember there was a young teen boy that identified as female who went into the women's washroom in his school, sexually assaulted a student. That was covered up by one school, and then he was transferred to another district where he did that again. But here's some more headlines. In Virginia, the school board tried to hide a rape of a female student by a biological male / transgender female student. Since then, the male student has been convicted of raping a young female student. The headline reads, VA judge finds transgender teen guilty of sexual assault in Loudoun County high school girls bathroom case. Yeah, this is the exact same case that I was talking about. Here's another headline. Oklahoma transgender student charged with assaulting female high school classmates in bathroom. Another one. Transgender Wyoming woman convicted of sexually assaulting 10-year-old girl in the bathroom. Here's another headline. Another transgender student flashed 4 freshman girls in their locker room after swim class in Wisconsin. This is happening everywhere. And guess what? It's always the men, the perverts, that are identifying themselves as women. It's never the other way. Or rarely it is. I've yet to hear one. I've yet to hear of a case like that. Transgender suspect threatens to rape Christian girls, inject HIV in people wearing crosses, copycat Nashville shootings. Male inmate convicted of raping female at Rikers Island women's facility. A male inmate identifying as a woman has been convicted of raping a female prisoner while housed at the women's facility. Like, we've gotten so crazy that men can identify as women and go into the female prison, and they get away with fucking hell over there. Right? This is, once again, just to tie it to the bigger story at hand, this is why leftism needs to be rooted out of society, and it needs to be destroyed in every way possible. This ideology that allows for this kind of stuff, for this transgenderism, it needs to be eradicated. We cannot tolerate this way of thinking, because if we do tolerate it, this is what happens. We are sending our children and women, the people that we are supposed to protect as men, we are sending them to slaughter if we are doing this. How many women have had their lives irrevocably changed because of a sexual assault, because of a physical assault, because they were denied opportunities, athletic or otherwise, because men were involved, because men believing themselves to be women or faking themselves to be women were involved? We can't allow for that. We can't allow for the kind of ideology that makes this a reality to exist. It has to be crushed. It has to be demoralized. It has to be made to be so unpopular that we link it akin to Nazism. That's what has to be done. Otherwise, this is just going to keep happening. This is just going to keep happening. And even if we get off of the trans topic, right? Just think about what the leftists, have done just to traditional male and female gender roles, right? All this smash the patriarchy shit. Have these people been to a Middle Eastern country and actually seen what a patriarchy looks like? These people actually believe that the West, here in North America and in Europe, that we have a patriarchy? Are they fucking serious? Women weren't allowed to have credit cards at one point in North America. Women weren't allowed to go to work. It was a socially ostracized thing just before the war. You know, before World War II and even World War I to an extent. You know, that's a patriarchal society. That's where the men rule. To make any argument that in anywhere beyond the 1960s that we're living in a patriarchy, there's an argument to be made for second and third wave feminism, first and second wave feminism, that they were living in a patriarchy. But this, now, in this day and age, are you serious? What fucking patriarchy? Remember all those stories about rape culture? What rape culture? We sentence rapists to jail time, and if they get into jail and people find out that they raped women or children, they get put to death. That's our rape culture. That's how we deal with rapists. That's what we do to them. So anybody coming out and saying, oh my God, the West, it's so patriarchal. Oh, this rape culture. What rape culture? You want to see a rape culture? Go to India. Go to India and see what happens with rapists. Go to India and hear about the hundreds, if not thousands, of stories of women being raped, gang raped, and left for dead. Or women that speak out against men, what happens to them? Marital rape is still legal in India. They're allowed to rape their wife. By law, they are allowed to do this. And when this law came into question, all the men came out in protest because they wanted to keep that as a law, that they should be able to rape their wife and get away with it, that she is their property. Talking about rape culture in the West. Fuck, get a grip. These people have no sense of reality. These people operate on a different planet. They literally do not understand. They fundamentally do not understand what it actually means to live in a patriarchy. It's insane. It's insane. I mean, go to Afghanistan, okay? Go to Iran. Go to Saudi Arabia, and see what an actual patriarchy is like. See how they actually treat their women, and then come back here in North America, and compare the two. It's not even close. It's not even close. Right, and this is just some of the gender stuff, just some of it. I'm going to be touching on like multiple of these dynamics as we go into the episode. All this race ideology that they shove down our throats, all these fucking leftists. And I'll refer you to the episode that I did on this, called Black History Month Fatigue. I did it a couple days ago. That has a much better breakdown because I'm not going to be able to get into all those details here. But the exact same thing, right? They view the world through this oppression hierarchy lens, and they see black people as some of the worst victims of this. As if still in 2026 we have systemic racism, and like there's no laws on the books in North America that tell you that a black man or woman is not equal to a white man or woman, or that they don't have access to opportunities. They don't have access to the same jobs. They don't have access to anything else. If anything, it's actually gone the other way. Now it's actually white people that are getting discriminated for jobs. At least here in Canada. You know, I've made this point multiple times in past episodes where I've shown you actual job ads that will say white men, right, white straight men will be considered below anyone that is disabled, anyone that is black, anyone that is female, anyone that is indigenous, because they're trying to correct for some kind of cosmic imbalance. Because racism happened. Racism is not a uniquely black experience. The African Americans that live here are not unique in that. Every single people on the planet at one point or another had slaves or were slaves. Do we hear anything about the Spanish complaining? Do we hear anything about the Europeans and how they enslaved each other and each other's tribes complaining? But apparently the African American experience is so unique, it's so truly evil and reprehensible. There's never been anything like it in the history of humanity, that we have to do some kind of correction, that we have to pay reparations. Fuck off. Fuck you. Reparations. Pay for what? All those people are dead. Every single one of them, either the perpetrators or the victims, they're all dead and they're all gone. Why are we paying for what happened 200 years ago? And also, why would paying for it fix anything? And even if you disagreed with me on all these points so far, fine, disagree with me, okay? But here's the thing. Black Lives Matter had their chance in the spotlight. They had their chance to actually enact some change, to improve policies, to make life for black people better. Did they actually achieve that goal? What did they do? They burned down the cities. They looted businesses, many of which were black. So they hurt their own people. They hurt their own communities. What did they actually fix? Are the inner cities actually less violent? Are we seeing less violent black on black crime? Are we really seeing that? What did we get out of it? Body cams? We got body cams that now show that actually officers are in the right more than half of the time to shoot these people because they're extremely violent. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, like how much proof do we need before we actually move on from this idea? I mean, is it really any surprise that Black Lives Matter hasn't had the same resurgence in how many years? Their own leaders took the money that the people donated to them, all those hundreds of millions of dollars, and they spent it on property. What does that tell you? Does that tell you that they're with it for the movement? That they're fellow brothers in arms? Really? We're gonna sit here and pretend like that's the case. That these same people that bought the mansions and all these housing developments, that they're actually with it, that they're here to advance the causes of black people. Give me a fucking break. Give me a fucking break. Insane. It's insane. And not even that. Leftists and immigration, my God, they're the ones that are fucking responsible for this. They're the ones that are responsible for making it so that I am now competing with Infinity Indians for work. I am like every Canadian, every North American, really, because the US has their own problem with H-1B visas. We're competing with this. And not just competing with this, but their ideas, their strife, right? Their ethnic issues are now at the forefront of our society. Here's the best example of this, okay? Not too long ago, not even like 2 weeks ago, there was a man that went on Parliament Hill in Ottawa and he had a flag. He had a Canadian flag that he decided to just come down and wave, maybe for the Freedom Convoy or what have you, but he was there and the police came by and said that because his pole was too long, it could be misconstrued as a weapon. Right? Not sure what kind of justification they have, but here's the video of his arrest.
You're arresting a man that's got a Canadian flag.
Yeah, we have rules.
You know what? You make your rules up as you go.
You can have flags, you just can't have.
What's wrong? No, but
it's too big. If it falls on someone, there's kids.
Yeah, but look, he's holding the flag peacefully. He wasn't near anybody.
Yeah,
look at you guys. Look what you guys are doing. You guys are arresting a man. You know why? No, you're making a big deal out of a Canadian flag. No, it is a big deal. Yes, it is. Because you guys make your own.
It's dangerous, man.
It's not dangerous. If you're, look at this.
Look at how big it is. It can easily fall.
Yeah, but look at that man. Look how big the guy is. He's holding it. Do you think he's going to?
Really? This is what we've gotten to as Canadians? This is the... Like, this didn't even make headlines. Nobody even knows that this happened. This is an isolated incident. Right? So this is a problem. A man waving a Canadian flag on his national... The doorstep of his national capital is a fucking problem. But this is okay. This is fine. You could have smoke canisters. You see all those flags in the background there on Parliament. That's fine. That's fine because they're protesting for Palestine. It's okay, right? And the way that this ties to the mass migration thing, as I mentioned before, right? Because this is where that point started. These people that come over here, okay, they bring their foreign strife. They bring their foreign conflict issues. You know, if we didn't import these people en masse from Palestine or otherwise, right, we wouldn't have as many people that actually are going out into the streets and protesting for this. But they're allowed to do this. They're allowed to do this. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Or worse yet, I think this is the video. These fucking Khalistani protesters that want an independent state in India for themselves, they're allowed to walk around not only with the flags, but they're allowed to go walk around and brandish swords. They're allowed to walk around and brandish swords on Parliament Hill. Look at these cops just standing here. Wow, look at all those flags. That's so strange. Wow, how tall is that flag? Is that a weapon? So this is allowed. In Canada, we're allowing this because the fucking leftists are in charge and they believe in this. They believe that people should be free to do this. But God forbid a Canadian decides to wave his own flag on his nation's capital. Look at these swords. These men are literally walking around with swords and blades. If I came to Parliament with a sword, I would get some looks, but because this guy has a turban on, he's allowed? This is what we're willing to tolerate? Right? This is what happens when we embrace leftist ideals, that all cultures are equal, that we have to recognize everyone, that these people should have the right to protest their own grievances as well, which fine. I'm not arguing to take away their right to protest. I'm just saying that when we lose focus of the issues that actually matter, Canadian issues, if we lose focus on patriotism, this is what happens. When we give in to these leftist tendencies to recognize every culture as equal, we have to recognize all their ethnic strife, we have to give them the exact same level, if not above. Because this isn't just on the same level. That Canadian man was arrested. This man was arrested, and I hope that he sees his day in court. I hope he sues the fuck out of these people, out of these cops, the Parliament police, what have you. Chances are the judge won't rule in his favor, and it's going to be a very costly lawsuit because our judicial system is fucking stacked with these leftists. Right? But this is exactly why that ideology needs to die down. If you can't walk in your nation's capital with a flag that's what? That thing is what, 3 meters? What weapon? These guys have fucking guns. Canadians can't even carry handguns on them. And these guys have guns and they're worried about a guy with a flag? Really? On our nation's capital? And they're arresting him. They're not saying, hey, do you mind just like maybe dislodging it? Do you mind just making it shorter? No, they went to arrest him. And this is exactly where leftism leads. This is exactly where that ideology leads. I mean, is it any surprise? Once again, swords are allowed, right? Swords are allowed, but God forbid, God forbid you decide to fly the flag of your own nation, but you can walk around openly with weapons because you're brown-skinned and you wear a head covering. I mean, at this point, all you're saying is Canadians, what they should do is they should start just doing blackface and walking around with flags of Canada. At this point, that would seem like the moral imperative on every Canadian is put on blackface and walk around with the flags. Because if they beat you, then you can say that you identify as black. I mean, if we're just playing by their own ridiculous fucking rules, you might as well just do that. Cool. Yeah. So, anyways, further on the topic of immigration, I mean, look at what these people are doing with ICE. Okay, with how aggressive they are against them. Which, mind you, whatever your feelings are on how they're acting, ICE is a federal agency, okay, that is empowered by the executive branch, being the president and his cabinet, but mostly the president, right? President that a good chunk, right, at least half of the population voted for, so there is an actual... there's a mandate for this. People voted for this. They wanted this to happen. And the president is acting on their wishes. Right? It's not as if 10 to 20% of the people voted and then that was it. And it's not a minority. People voted for this. They wanted this. Okay? And these people think that they have the right to impede federal law enforcement from enacting the law. Whatever your argument may be regarding their tactics, their ability to effectively deport people, that is neither here nor there. Just the fact alone that these people think that impeding with law enforcement is in any way a self-righteous, like, justified act. Renee Good and whatever the male nurse's name was that got shot, all these people that think they're in the right to get in the way. I mean, where do you get off? These people are executing the law as it stands. If you want to change the law, go to your lawmaker. Make some calls. Make sure that they lose in the primary. Make sure that you have enough political influence. Otherwise, what is the point of this? And this video here, it's just an example of what happens when these people get rabid. They start attacking their own. There have been dozens of incidents ever since these ICE deportation orders have come down for these people to start attacking just random cars. You know, because they'll check on their spreadsheet to see if the car pops up as a legitimate ICE vehicle. But sometimes if you're just driving a certain type of vehicle, they will stop you over and treat it as a checkpoint, as if these people have that fucking authority. And they will go after their own. There have been plenty of videos where they've assaulted just random people that are actually not ICE. They're just in a coffee shop or they're wearing certain clothing, but because they fit the bill in one way or another, and they're so rabidly against this that they will actually, like, they will attack them. They will attack their own.
Can I drive? I got a red light.
So now we need permission to drive from these people?
Can you back up slightly and go right?
Yeah, I could. If you'll leave, I'll go right. Thank you. Oh, well, that.
What the fuck? These people are holding up traffic just because they believe themselves to be self-righteous? And that is by far the most lenient example of this. Because there are plenty more that are much worse when ICE agents and people in ICE, like, they attack their own. Let me see if I can find some examples. Find me videos on X of anti-ICE protesters attacking non-ICE agents or people that are otherwise part of their movement. I saw a video just today of a man that was driving through a checkpoint and he was holding out a sign in support, but they were throwing fucking dildos and frozen water bottle at his car. I mean, these people legitimately, they believe themselves to be so self-righteous. These leftists think that they are so right in their cause that the moment that they even get a whiff of anybody that is not congruent with their beliefs in any way, shape, or form, they act militantly towards them. They will act violently towards them. Right? Once again, the whole point of this episode is to say, this isn't a matter of sitting down and debating with these people. There is no debating with these people. There is no room for discussion with these people. We have to treat them like we treat communists. We have to ridicule them. We have to push them out of general society. We have to make it so unpopular to be a leftist, to be a hardcore leftist, that it's akin to being a Nazi. There is no other way. If we're going to build the civilization of the future, if we're actually going to become a spacefaring civilization, if we're actually going to do great things and try to live to certain ideals and build our society, right, to fix our problems, we need to eradicate this ideology. We need to make it so that it can't exist within the university. We have to make it so that it can't exist in greater life. You should not be able to fire people based on certain, like, a wrongful opinion. You shouldn't be able to go into a girl's bathroom if you just say that you're female. Right? All these things that they're allowing because it's congruent with their ideology are fundamentally poisonous. They are poisonous and people are suffering as a result. We are setting ourselves back decades by believing in this, by allowing this belief to expand. Here's that video that I just saw today. Right, he's calling for a Nuremberg 2.0. He wants to have, he's clearly advocating for it. He's pulling out another sign saying we all have eyes. Yeah, he's indicating that they're all seeing. And they're throwing fucking dildos on his car. Like, what are they doing? He's even yelling that he's on their side. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit. They see a white man in a pickup and they assume ICE. They don't care. He's literally yelling, I'm on your side. And they don't give a shit. I think this is the same video. Yeah, this is the exact same video. We got another one here. And here's what they do to people that they disagree with. Okay, that is actually genuinely funny. I'm gonna save this in my bookmarks because this is hilarious. They're throwing ice on the road and they got a paintball gun ready to go. Amazing. I understand they're agitating them, but any rational person is going to look at that and be like, okay, well, we can't engage because we're going to give them exactly what they want. We're going to give them the clips of what they actually want. But that is hilarious. I'm gonna save that one. That certainly is something. Why can't I bookmark this? Are you serious? The fuck? There we go. All right, what else we got here?
They start right at the beginning of the we're receiving more and more.
Oh yeah, this was an incident where like a teacher was beat by his students for having an anti-ICE opinion. I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, are these people that we can sit down and break bread with? These are people that we can have a discussion with? These are people that we can tolerate? When they take this kind of energy towards an opinion, are you serious? This is the kind of thing that we, kind of society that we want to live in, where we welcome these people to the discussion?
Black men are standing up for immigrants. No. Get on my face. Get out of my face. Get out. I will stand strong. I will stand strong.
They're fighting amongst each other. They're fighting amongst each other nonstop. Let's see if we can get another clip here. These are just some random dudes at a gas station. They think they have the look of an ICE agent, which is why they go against them.
Of the way! Get out of the way!
Yeah, these are people that we can have discussions with. These are people that we can tolerate. Really? No. These people don't get the benefit of the doubt. You don't get to come out and say, I want to live in a free society and I want to have all the benefits of being able to state my opinion, but also if anyone disagrees with me, I'm going to jump on their car, I'm going to blockade them, I'm going to throw things at them, I'm going to shout them out. They think that they're part of some fucking resistance movement, which is exactly why so many of them are just getting popped by ICE, because they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. For one reason or another, they don't have any meaning in their life, so they filled that gaping hole, right? If they're not busy dilating it, they're busy filling it with all these social movements. And this is how they act towards people that they disagree with. They will beat you, they will throw shit at you, they will shout you down, they will exercise you from greater society, they will make sure you can't work, and at the end of the day, they will fucking kill you. If they killed Charlie Kirk for having those modest, and with all due respect, as a conservative, he's fairly modest. He was not nearly going as far as someone as, let's say, Nick Fuentes or any of these other people on the alt-right or the far-right. Okay? Charlie Kirk was a softie compared to them, and they killed him. They killed him and they cheered on his death. They cheered on his fucking death. And this is what they do. This is what they do. So are we going to tolerate it? Is this fine? No. I'm making the case that this needs to be stamped out. And I'll get into some specifics of how we achieve that. But just to go further on the immigration angle, okay, I want to talk about some more stories. There was an incident between 2015 and 2016, right? The 2015 Christmas season, where 1,200 women were reported to have been sexually assaulted, especially in the city of Cologne. Many of these incidents, women were in public spaces. They were surrounded and assaulted by large groups of men who were identified by officials as men of North African and Arab origin. When this happened in Germany, right, this was the peak of the migrant crisis back then. All these Africans and otherwise coming in to Europe as a result of the conflict in Syria and all these other different conflicts, right? 1,200 women were assaulted. And the response by the media was silence. They didn't say shit. Critics have accused the government and media of not adequately reporting the events to avoid talking about the controversial topic of the suspects' ethnicities. Well-known newspapers have reported that the hesitation shown by the police. The latter stated that on January 10th, 2016, that for a week the truth about the New Year's Eve in Cologne was only available under the counter. Piece by piece it came to light because police officers who had been deployed began to talk. 1,200 of the women that you are supposed to protect, the women of your own people, were sexually assaulted by foreigners, and they decided that it was politically inconvenient to talk about them because the leftists, right, these people that push their fucking ideology down our throats, they think that, oh, we have to be supportive of them. We can't blame them. It's where they come from. We have to import these people en masse to our countries. We have to welcome them with open arms. Right? This is the approach that they have towards mass migration. We have to welcome them with open arms because the whites of Europe have some unique guilt. They have some unique obligation that they have to play a role in welcoming these people in our country. People that would rape your women, take your jobs, violently assault them, kill them. We have to accept them into our country, right? That was the narrative back then. And guess what happens when you import them? Your women get raped and sexually assaulted. Right? This is an extremely graphic example, but this is exactly what happens. This is exactly what happens when leftism is left unchecked. This is exactly what happens. Okay? Look at this map. Look at this map right here. These are all the cities where it happened. In Cologne, around 650 sexual assaults, 22 rapes. Hamburg, 400 sexual assaults, 2 rapes. And this is all that we know of. This is all that was reported. Because rape is one of those crimes, like, I remember when I took a course in criminology, it's one of those crimes that women are actually quite ashamed of reporting. So a lot of rapes actually go unreported. Because they know that catching the perpetrator, especially in some circumstances, especially if they were under the influence, it's extremely difficult. So this number, for all we know, could actually be much lower than what the actual number is. By April 2016, statistics recorded by authorities indicated that out of the identified 153 suspects in Cologne who were convicted of sexual offenses and other crimes on New Year's Eve, 2/3 were originally from Morocco or Algeria. 44% were asylum seekers, and 12% were likely to have been in Germany illegally. Right? So this approach that they have to mass migration and immigration, this is what happens. Your women get raped. So we're going to tolerate this? We're going to tolerate this because we're supposed to be welcoming to them for some fucking reason, the people that don't even share our ideals? And I'm not talking about this as if I'm German and I'm from German descent, but this happens in Canada too. This happens in America too. When we import these Indians, all these other people from these different nations that don't even have any semblance of what we have regarding the respect of women, the kind of laws and rights and freedoms afforded to them. This is what happens when they come here en masse. Canada has had its own, I've said this on the podcast multiple times now, we've had our own experience with these people either sexually assaulting kids or women in general, harassing them, physically beating them. There have been plenty of incidents. just because we haven't had a flashpoint like this in 2015, 2016, and this is 10 years ago. You think the rape stopped? You think they just stopped doing it? This is just one incident on over a holiday season. What's the number actually at now, 10 years later, of how many women have been sexually assaulted or physically assaulted by these men, by these migrants? All those migrant raping gang stories that we heard in the UK this past summer, that hasn't stopped. It's still going. And the reason that it's going, right, once again, just to tie it back to the whole reason for me to talk about all this stuff, is because of leftism. It's this idea that we as white nationalist countries, not white, well, actually, no, they do see us as white nationalists. We as the colonizers, we have some unique debt to pay to the third world. No, the fuck we don't. We don't owe these people shit. We don't owe these people anything. And yet they believe otherwise. They believe that we have to be nice to them, we have to open our houses to them, our churches to them, our schools to them, our immigration process to them, our economy to them, and this is what happens. You get raped in more ways than one. God, even look at the Trevi Fountain that the leftists have ruined. Because the leftists decided, right? This is a little bit off of the immigration angle, but once again, leftists just ruining shit. Leftists ruining beautiful things because they believe themselves to be self-righteous. They believe in their cause so vehemently that they think that they are right. They think that they are justified in acting the way that they do. Right, this beautiful fountain, which, look, I don't even know the majority of its history, okay, but I don't need to. I can just recognize that it is fundamentally a beautiful thing and a testament to the immense, I know I keep using this word again, but the immense beauty of what man can make. I mean, look at this. That video is pixelated as fuck, so you're not going to be able to see it. But could you imagine what kind of work it took to make something like this? Let me see if I can find a better image. Could you imagine how much work it took to carve all of this out? Look at all that definition of the muscle, the veins, all the rock formations. That is like just, they carved a tree out of marble. Do you understand what you have to do as a culture in order to get to that point where you go beyond, focusing on basic instincts of survival and you can actually get to a place where you can celebrate something as artful and creative as this? Do you realize how much cultural capital has to be expelled for this? How much money and time and effort has to be put into making something this beautiful or even a fraction of this beauty? And the leftists fucking ruined it because they decided, it'd be a great place to put our climate protest right in front of that fountain. So they dumped a bunch of black ink in there talking about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, which, mind you, were used to make their own posters and the clothing that they're wearing. These fucking protesters having the gall to do this. So as a result of all these protesters and migrants bathing in the fountain, right, because of this cockiness, guess what? The Trevi Fountain is now blocked behind a paywall. Now you have to pay, I think it's €4 to see the Trevi Fountain. Now you can't just walk upon it. You can't just, if you're just happen to be in Italy and you just want to see this fountain, now they have a fucking paywall. Now you have to line up, you have to go and wait your turn, you have to pay to see it. Which, fine, okay, I guess now they can, more maintenance fees and all that, and they can upkeep the fountain, and now this helps it so that not just anyone can get let in there, but this didn't need to happen. In a high-trust society, people would be able to go see that fountain and not have to worry about paying. Because we would operate under the impression, under the understanding, that this is a sacred place. This place needs to be preserved. This level of beauty, right? What it took to achieve something like this, we can't even fathom. And yet these fucking self-righteous leftists, they think that they're in the right to go and to besmirch something like this, something that they couldn't even fathom what it takes to make something like this, to even learn how to make something like this. And they want to use it as their pedestal to protest? Fuck you, man. Fuck you. You ruined it for everyone else. And that's what they do. Think about all the paintings that they've dumped their soup on. Think about all the times they've glued their hand on the highway. All those stories of them like just completely closing down a highway, and those emergency vehicles of people that had to go to the hospital or women giving birth or what have you got stopped because a bunch of leftists were so self-righteous in their own intent that they think that they're in the right to just tell everyone, no, guess what? We're not moving. You're actually going to have to deal with us. You're going to have to tolerate this. I mean, my God, these fucking people, they have no idea what it means to live by a coherent sense of morality. They have no understanding of what that is. It's their hierarchy, right? The oppression hierarchy that I've mentioned before, which is based on intersectionality, right? If you're black, you go above the whites. If you're female, you go above the men. If you're disabled, you go above the non-disabled. If you're transgender, you go above the straight, right? This is how it works in every single fathom. Whether it's with immigration, whether it's with sexuality, whether it's with job postings, like how in Canada it's legal to discriminate against straight white men in job postings, which I've posted several examples of this before. I mean, literally, like, I'll go on my profile right now. There was a case, like, not even last week, where there was an advertisement that was put up. Yeah, Brock University. Brock University just posted a tenure track job for a professor of nursing. Qualification must be black. And here's a quote. The Faculty of Applied Health Sciences and Department of Nursing at Brock University are seeking a black scholar. Qualifications, specifically a black scholar. Whites not need apply. And this isn't just happening in Brock. This is happening in UBC as well. This opportunity is limited to applicants who self-identify as black. And once again, I say, okay, so if we're to play your game, I guess the whites just have to get comfortable putting on blackface, if that's what you're making us do. Because at this point, if that's what gets me through the door, if that's what gets me into the interview, then fuck, I mean, I might as well just do that. You're going to call me a racist anyway. I might as well at least try to play by your rules. Self-identify as black. We can't share a society with these people. They have to be eradicated. And I'm not talking about putting them in camps. I'm not talking about taking violence against them. No. These people, okay, they have to be ushered out of polite society. They have to be forced. They have to be forced in some way, shape, or form. Maybe force isn't the right word. They have to be shamed. Okay, they have to be shamed to such an extent that, as I said before, leftism, right, being an open leftist has to be considered career suicide, has to be considered social suicide. Right? That's what it has to be akin to. Because if we don't do that, right, none of the laws, none of anything that we do will actually make a difference. Because it's only until there's a cultural shift, it's only until these ideas are eradicated and substituted with something else, that an actual change can take place. You know, like banning DEI, banning certain books, banning all, like, that will not do anything, because these people are just going to get up and say, oh my God, look at how hard they're going against us. These hyper racists, these misogynists, these transphobes, right? That's what they're going to get up and say, and then that becomes the narrative. No. We have to make it unsustainable to have these beliefs. You can't just ban them. You can't just get rid of the books. You can't just do that. No, we have to break them from within. Okay, and I'm not even going to have time to go into all the other examples of this. But let me just play a few clips before I actually talk about what needs to happen coherently. Another great thing that leftists love to do is talk about the expansion of drug programs and how people should have access to crack pipes in order to make sure that they have access to safe drugs.
Does Health Canada set an age requirement on who can access all federally approved supervised drug consumption sites? Yes or no?
Health Canada does the approval for the exemption request, which is an exemption from the CDSA, or the Drugs and Substances Act, and that allows for an individual to go into the site with possession of a substance and use it in a supervised location.
Is there
The
an
Health
age
Canada
requirement
does
on
not
that?
set an age limit. Some of the sites may have policies
Yeah,
and
but not
procedures.
federal regulations. Like there's
Health
no
Canada
federal-
provides the exemption for to be allowed to have possession of the product in the site,
There's
but we
no-
do not determine an age. Health Canada does not have an age limit in legislation.
Thank you.
You heard that right. Okay, Health Canada does not have an age limit with who can go to these safety injection sites and use these drugs. They don't even ID people. It's not a matter of legislation for them. They will let anybody and everybody go in there. That's exactly what she said, because once again, this comes from that leftist idea that we have to be, kind to these people. We have to address their needs. We have to give them what they need. And if that means giving them crack pipes and needles, so be it. Right? This is that exact thing, because in the oppression hierarchy, right? These are the poor. These are the disabled. These are the addicts. We have to care for them. We have to provide social services for them. It's all in the same vein of leftist ideology. They use the exact same hierarchy regardless of the issue. This is in the exact same vein. We have to provide these social services. We have to buy millions of crack pipes for these people. And when I say millions, I genuinely mean millions. There's a story that came out recently, right? where Toronto has bought millions of crack pipes for these people. Why the fuck are our tax dollars going to this? Why am I funding somebody's next potential overdose? Why is any amount of money going to that? Why aren't they the ones that have to buy their own crack pipes, buy their own syringes? With all due respect, I shouldn't be funding your fucking drug habit. Nobody should be. But they believe in this. The leftists believe in this. And so they create these programs. Right? And the worst kind of leftist, okay, the worst kind of leftist, it's not even, it's not the average everyday student, because you can be like, okay, well, they're discovering their place in the world. They say that if you're young and you're not a liberal, then you have no heart, and if you're old and you're conservative, then you have no brain, right? As that saying goes, the youth tend to be liberal and left leaning. Yeah, that's just because you haven't had experience in the world and you don't really know how the way that it works. It's a normal dynamic to have, right? But the worst ones are the ones that actually know better. They should know better. The rich, right? The influential, the powerful, people that have actually been through shit, people that have lived on this planet. They should know better because their frontal cortex has formed. Okay, they've had lived experiences, but they're the worst kind of leftist because they will advocate for the same issues that leftists do from their ivory tower, but the moment that shit hits the fan, right, they can just close their gated communities to everyone else. They can close access to them and they'll be fine. They're living in their mansion. They'll talk about eat the rich. Meanwhile, they're also the rich, right? And this dynamic, right? This is where we get stuff like this.
Every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that, you know what I mean? Like when I'm saying
there's more jobs to be.
Yeah. That's what she believes. Demi Moore or whatever the fucking her face is. Notice like nobody applauded, nobody's backing her up because she genuinely believes this, that Mexicans are only good for toilet cleaning. This is what they believe in their ivory tower. This is exactly what they believe in. This is exactly what they believe in, which is exactly why Billie Eilish came out with that recent comment about giving the land back. This is exactly why she made that comment. Because she can sit there. She has her own land. She has her own $4 million or whatever $1 million fucking mansion. She can just sit on her property and she doesn't care. It's the rest of the little people that got to give their land back. And so when somebody actually tries to call her for it, right? There's a UK journalist that came to her house saying that he's gonna come by to visit her home. Right? She said, "Oh, stolen land. Everyone's welcome on stolen land." Right? Everyone's legal on stolen land. They actually went to her house and tried this out, and guess what? They didn't let him in. Of course, because they don't actually believe in it.
And no one is illegal on stolen land.
Stolen? Are you fucking kidding? Stolen? They were conquered. They were murdered. They were eradicated. Men and women, all the same, mostly men, died to conquer this land, to colonize this land. The fact that you can even get up there to speak into a microphone, do you realize the amount of steps that had to take place in order for that to be a reality? For you to be able to make a living with music? Do you understand how fucking privileged you are? How lucky you are to live in this day and age? To be able to spout your fucking bullshit? No, of course she doesn't. Of course she... And all the people applauding. Oh my God, Billie Eilish, she said the thing. Nobody's illegal on stolen land. Okay, so if that's the case, why didn't you let this reporter in? Why didn't you let the guy from the UK? Why didn't you let him in? If you actually believe in what you're saying, right? If nobody's illegal on stolen land, how come you didn't let him in? If you actually believe nobody's illegal on stolen land, then why do you have a massive front gate? Why do you live in your gated community? See, these are the worst kind of leftists. These champagne socialists. Because they only believe in it insofar as it gets them social points, but they don't actually act on it. You know, at least like other leftists will, you know, they'll go and they'll volunteer at a homeless shelter or what have you. They'll give their clothes off their back in some cases. Like, you know, they'll actually self-sacrifice to an extent. You know, they all have their limit, but they'll actually self-sacrifice. They'll go out and they'll get pepper sprayed and they'll do all these things, right? They will send thousands of dollars to BLM and they will put themselves at risk for these movements. But these fucking people in their ivory towers just sitting there and talking down to us, are you insane? Nobody's illegal on stolen land? Conquered land, you dumb bitch. Conquered. Settled. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And I'll just finish off with this little tirade because I know we're getting to a limit here. And for anyone that's still hanging on with us, I salute you. But as I've said before, ideology cannot be killed. Okay, so do not misconstrue what I've said for that. It cannot be killed. The only thing that we can do is to say that we have to make it so unpopular to be a leftist that people don't even consider it as a rational option. We have to make it so that leftism is seen for what it is, the cancer upon society that should be treated as such. Because with a cancer, you don't make nice with it. You don't have a dialogue with it. You cut it out. You destroy it because it is killing you from within, and there is no other way. There's so many more hours of footage that I could have shown of all the Black Lives Matter protests, of people in universities getting screamed at, Charlottesville, what have you. Like, so many other instances where the rabid left is so unhinged. I mean, wishing death upon political figures, celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, Luigi Mangione, all these different things. Right, but we've all seen this. We've grown up with this. We've gotten accustomed to it. But this is not normal. Okay, so where does the idea of, you know, the 100 years come in? Right, as I mentioned at the beginning. These ideas and ideologies, they take years to develop. The left didn't just pop up overnight. This is a concerted effort that has happened not just from the universities, but mainly from the universities since the 60s and even before that. Right? These ideologies, they crash back and forth throughout the centuries. Now, the current trend is the right is, we're getting some steam, but this is only the beginning. Okay, we are embarking on a mission that will take decades to fix. The social development that has to take place so that we no longer see men dressing up as women as normal, this is going to take decades. This is going to take generations. An ideological shift like this is not going to happen overnight. We need to be developing culture and cultural artifacts that can help spread that message, that we no longer tolerate it. We need to be creating new institutions to facilitate and fund the ideology that stands against this. We need to be running for office and electing like-minded people, not just grifters and those that say the right thing, but people that actually hold themselves to account, that will hold their principles close to their heart. These are the kind of people that we need to elect and put in control. Anybody that's short of that cannot be allowed into office. These people cannot be allowed to walk the halls of power. They cannot be allowed to have the reins of the institutions. And even if you disagree with me on that, look at what's happened. In the last several decades, these people have had the cultural domination. They've had all of this, and guess what? What's happened? Has our quality of life improved so drastically? Are we discovering new frontiers? No, it just seems like everyone's playing a game of grievance politics. The Palestinians hate Israel, so they shut down entire streets and we tolerate it. They shut down entire university campuses and we tolerate it. They wish violence against communities and we tolerate it. The Indians get to walk on Parliament Hill with swords, and they're allowed to do that, but God forbid a Canadian white man hold his nation's flag on the Capitol. Has quality of life really improved for people all that much? Where has feminism gotten us? Where has third wave feminism actually gotten us? We're experiencing record low birth rates. Men and women are finding it extremely difficult to find pairs and life partners and build something. The women are starting to get tired of working because they want to be mothers and fulfill their role. The men feel disaffected because the ones that aren't actually striving to build themselves as men, they're drowning in fucking Funko Pops and video games and weed and all these vices. And where's that leading them? No, we need to be holding ourselves and our leaders accountable by our set principles. There is no other way. We have to absolutely dominate leftists and usher them out of polite society, just like how they've tried to do with us. Okay, so one of the things, right? One of the concrete things that we can at least start to do is start asking of our politicians, start making this demand that they need to start holding universities accountable. These institutions, they work off the public dollar. Not only because of student loans and how they're granted here in Canada, but because of donations, right? And the amount of tax revenue that they get, tax breaks, what have you, right? We need to start withholding funding from these institutions if they do not, at the least, either shift their ideological tendencies or at least just start allowing for opinions to be said on campus without the fear of being shouted down. Like, if we're going to talk about an inflection point of where we can start to make that change, it has to be university. That has to be one of the first places that we start. Because this is exactly where these people get indoctrinated. I saw it firsthand, as I've told you on, through many of my stories, and I'll be telling more stories as the show goes on, right, in future episodes. But this is where that indoctrination happens. This is where they start meeting those like-minded people that share their ideas on this. right? In addition to that, we have to completely do away with race-based hiring policies, whether it's affirmative action or these anti-white hiring policies that we have in Canada. We need to make them outright illegal. You can't hire based on race. Doesn't matter that slavery happened 200 years ago. It doesn't matter that men are misrepresent or dominant in a certain field. You know, nobody's crying about the fact that men dominate the bricklaying field. Nobody's crying about the fact that men are dominating the construction field. It's always like STEM and computer science, all these like HR, all these like, you know, white collar kind of fields. Nobody gives a shit about the electricians, the drywallers, the people that are actually building infrastructure. Nobody's crying about that. No women are clamoring to get in there. It's all the fucking comfortable jobs. Oh no, there's so many more men developers and men game designers and men this and men that. How come nobody's talking about the male bricklayers? The overrepresentation of men laying brick or laying pipe or police officers. Yeah, so we have to do away with that. Race-based hiring. Ban land acknowledgements. Ban that shit. Like that is actually one ban that I would support. Completely ban them. Because here's the thing. Whatever you're feeling towards land acknowledgements, at the end of the day, you're giving the indigenous an out. You're giving them an opportunity to use that against you in a court of law. To say, look, the schools are having land acknowledgements, the municipal government is having land acknowledgements, the provincial government is having land acknowledgements, the federal government is having land acknowledgements. All of you are acknowledging you're on stolen land. Okay, so give it the fuck back. Right? And if we give in to that instinct, if we allow for those ideas to exist, then what are property rights? Why would anyone buy a house or invest in land? Right? As you're seeing right now play out in British Columbia, as I've said before. Entire developments have shut down because they're like, well, we're not sure because we think that the courts are actually crazy enough to give these people their fucking land back. So why would we invest in a project that's not even going to be ours, potentially? Right? This is happening all over the country, and until that gets resolved, these people are just going to keep calling you out on their bullshit. They're just going to keep saying, okay, fine, you want to play that game? We'll call you on your bluff. We'll take the land back. And finally, the other thing that we have to do, just like outright, federally, ban transgender therapies and surgeries for minors. If you're below 18, once again, as I said before, if you can't even make a decision about a tattoo, if you can't even make a decision regarding being able to drive, being able to vote, being able to drink, if you're not able to do any of those things, you should not have the right to cut your dick off, to cut your tits off, to create a gaping wound that is supposed to resemble a vagina that you have to dilate every single day just so that it doesn't close up. Take drugs that are castrating you, essentially. You should not be able to have that freedom as a child. Turn 18, 19, and you want to do that, by all means. You're an adult, you want to make those decisions and fuck up your life, you're more than welcome to. Just don't make the rest of us pay for it. Don't make the rest of us involved in it, and don't make it so that we have to abide by your pronouns. That should not be forced on people. In fact, what we should do is the opposite. We should force people to be able to make that decision when you're an adult. And any argument that says otherwise, God, just give it another 5 years. Give it another 10 years. Okay, let's see what happens to all these kids that transitioned way too early. Let's see what happens to you. Because I would bet all my money. I would bet all my maple bucks. I would bet all of it on the fact that it is not going to look good and that history will not look upon us kindly for allowing for this kind of ideology to exist, to be supported. There's going to be a lot of regret down the line, and I'm not even reveling in that fact. I feel sad. I feel bad for them. Could you imagine what that would mean? You're no longer sexually aroused. Your entire frame of the world is not what it is. You know, it's one thing for me to be disillusioned about university. Could you imagine being disillusioned by your own body, by your own feelings? And then then come to find out Your parents, your friends, all your educators, everyone was supporting you in that decision. Nobody at any point said, hey, maybe think on it, maybe just sit on it for a little bit. Do you realize what that does to a person? So yeah, we're going to see some crazy shit in the next couple of years when these people actually grow up and they realize the mistakes they've made. Because the reason that all of this matters, the transgenderism, these culture wars, all this leftist fucking bullshit, right? The reason why that matters is because their ideology is not congruent with a high trust society. It is not. Because when you disagree with them, as I've already shown you in multiple instances and as we've seen throughout the years, they will shout you down. They will demean you. And it doesn't matter if you're an old lady or a young man. They will do everything in their power to shut you up. They will show up. They will protest. They will yell in your face. They will get physical. They will assault you. And in the most extreme cases, they will kill you. And when you die, they will cheer on your death. These people are not to be tolerated. This ideology is not to be tolerated. We can't make nice with them. We can't talk with them. There is no dialogue to be had. These people are extremists. We need to call it out for what it is, and we need to do everything that we can to eradicate this philosophy, this frame of mind from society. Plain and simple. So when I say to destroy the left, this is what I mean. You know, I was a decent liberal before all of this craziness, before the social justice shit. I was a decent liberal. It didn't have to be like this. I never thought about immigration to the extent that I do now. I never thought about gender ideology to the extent that I do now. I never thought that this would even be something of a concern for me growing up. But these people have set the table. They've set the rules. So now we have to think about it. Now we have to have an opinion. Now we have to actually do something. Because we let it get too far. We need to change the tide. Otherwise, they're going to dominate the conversation. They're going to dominate the institutions. They're going to dominate the legal system, the justice system, the political system. And they are going to do unspeakable things to us. They're going to go even harder than they have been already if we don't turn things around. So yeah, that is, I guess that's the episode. As much as I'd love to go further, we're reaching a time limit here that I'd like to finish off with. Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I understand that a good chunk of this episode is a black pill, but look, realistically, these culture wars are not something that you need to focus on every single day, and this shouldn't be a primary focus of yours, but it's good to keep in the back of your mind, to remember, right? The reaction they had to Charlie Kirk and the opinions that he had, if you were to die and you hold similar opinions, they will do the exact same thing to you. They will do the exact same thing to your kids, to your women, to your children, to everyone that you love and hold dear. Just because they have a disagreement with you. They will not hesitate to react as such. And we can't have that. We can't have a high trust society and also share it with these people. We absolutely cannot. But also, don't let it occupy your entire mind. It's just something like this is a frame of reference that should be used moving forward. Right? That people need to understand. It's not about, oh my God, the left is so annoying. No. We need to reframe that thinking. The left is leftists, extreme leftists, they are a cancer and they need to be treated as such. You do not negotiate with cancer. You cut it out and you kill it. And once again, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not saying that people should take arms against these people. What I'm saying is this ideology, the leftist ideology, it needs to be stamped out. It needs to be made so unpopular that it is akin to Nazism. Okay? That's what needs to happen. So with that being said, thank you guys for being so patient and waiting for this episode. I apologize that it didn't happen sooner. Just had some things come up. But in any case, if you want to support the stream, the show, the project. Like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate anyone and everyone that even watches this. If you want to go a step further and have a question or a donation read on stream, you're more than welcome to go into the PayPal or the crypto donation links, which are both in the bio.link/whitepill link, which will be in every single episode on my profile as well. And without further ado, I hope you guys have had a fantastic week with the new one coming on. Got plenty to look forward to. We're already 1 month into the year. There's so much work to be done, so many more things to do. And I'm excited to share it with you all. So I hope you all have a good night, and I will see you Monday night for our regularly scheduled stream. Take care.